Chapter 12-15. In terms of quality, the heavy saber Yun-Yang had given was undoubtedly better than the spiritual convergence weapon that the mystical beasts had nurtured for their entire lives. However, it still lacked the ability of the spiritual convergence weapon and its owner to support each other. Having been imbued with mystical chi by two high-level mystical beasts, the saber had reached its limit when it fought against countless demonic weapons and was physically strong. If another two beast kings were to take turns, the saber would not be able to continue and would follow in the footsteps of the broken weapons on the ground. Seeing that the mystical weapons could not last any longer, the beast kings could not help but feel worried. It's all right, it's all right. Yin-Yang quickly kept the broken pieces of the weapons into his space and handed them over to Emmy to decompose and convert. During this period of time, another mountain of broken weapons that was even bigger than the previous one rose from the ground. From afar, mystical beasts were still moving more broken pieces over. A group of flying mystical beasts hovered in the air, panting, their round eyes staring unblinkingly at the door that was suffused with demonic chi. Once they realized that there was a gap in their line of defense, they would rush down and self-destruct to fill the gap. Yin-Yang gathered the 10 beast kings together. With a low grunt, Emmy began to imbue the chi of vitality into them. One for each of them. The moment the 10 beasts received the chi of vitality, they could acutely feel that their exhausted bodies, which could not be sustained by sheer willpower, were suddenly washed away. Instead, they were filled with an inexhaustible amount of energy. The many wounds that covered their bodies disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even their cultivation base had skyrocketed inexplicably. It had only been a blink of an eye, but they had already broken through the barrier that they had not broken through for thousands of years. The mysterious energy of unknown origin was still growing rapidly in their bodies. Oh my God, without exception, the 10 beast kings felt as if they were about to die from bliss at this moment. Their gazes that looked at Yun-Yang were burning like a volcano that had erupted. The leader of the residents of 9 Supremes was obviously a god. Clang, 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 dozens of weapons were tossed on the ground. They were all powerful and deadly weapons. Yin-Yang said, with these and the fact that all of you have recovered to your peak condition, taking turns to fight while the rest recuperate, isn't it difficult to guard this door? It's not difficult at all. The Xian beasts nodded their heads like chickens pecking at rice. Their eyes were filled with ferocity, and they wanted nothing more than to devour the Xian beasts on the other side. Everyone had recovered to their peak condition, even better than when they were at their peak. Complemented by these elite weapons, the Beast Kings would have dared to try even if Yun-Yang had asked them to launch a counterattack on the other side of the demonic race's gateway, let alone just taking turns to guard the gateway. Just as Yun-Yang finished speaking, he plopped down on the ground without a care for his image, looking like he was too tired to move. He said weakly, then, let me rest for a while. This was naturally an act. However, at this moment, he had no choice but to act. He was afraid that he would not be weak enough. He simply wanted to spit out a few ounces of blood to show that he was extremely weak. There were tens of thousands of mystical beasts' eyes in front of Yun-Yang, all of them focused on him, their gazes filled with passion and flattery. It was as if a miser had seen a peerless treasure. An old bachelor who had been thirsty for dozens of years suddenly saw a naked peerless beauty. The effect of the life aura from before was simply too good. This was only the ones who had seen it. If those who had not come, it would be like the entire Tian Fa Holy Land had moved, gathering all the mystical beasts' attention on Yun-Yang alone. How many mystical beasts were there in the Tian Fa Holy Land? Billions of them, could only be more. If each of them was given a strand of chi of vitality, Emmy would probably die of exhaustion in no time, let alone Yun-Yang. The so-called killing with a gaze seemed like a joke, but if the gazes of billions of living beings were all focused on one person, would one be able to take it? Even if one was condemned by 1,000 people, one would still die without any illness. This was the gaze of billions of living beings. How could one be so lucky? The golden-furred bear king said gratefully, Sect leader Yun, did you hurt your foundation by healing us just now? The beast kings were no fools. Since when had there been such a miraculous power in this world? What happened just now was not only to heal their injuries and restore their condition, but also to elevate their cultivation base, helping each beast king to take another step forward. It would be strange if such a heaven-defying skill could be obtained without paying a considerable price. Yin Yang waved his hand weakly and said with a smile, "It's all right, it's all right. The mystical spiritual chi just now was created by my sex arcane skill. It's a hindrance to me, but it's not a huge problem. I'll be fine as long as I rest for a while." The same goes for the method of refining the essence of the broken weapons. Now, blocking this door is the key. Everything else is insignificant. The beast kings were silent for a moment before they bowed in unison. They knew that Yun Yang had said this to put everyone at ease. Looking at him, the consumption of his sex arcane skill must have been considerable. It might not be completely unscathed, or it might even leave a lasting disaster. It was only right that such a mystical skill that was unimaginably powerful and effective came with a huge price to pay for the user. They were strangers who had met by chance and did not know each other, but he had made such a huge sacrifice for everyone just because of a little bit of karma. The beast kings remembered this friendship in their hearts. "Everyone, hold your ground. We must guard the door. Don't let anything slip through." The Tiger King roared and took the lead. Their current state was even better than when they were at their peak. With the aid of Yun Yang's medicine and the powerful divine weapons in their hands, they could take turns to rest and recover their energy. In addition to that, there were so many mystical beasts under their command. There would not be any major problem with the demonic beast stampede before them. A few kings went forward to urge the army while the Monkey King stayed by Yun Yang's side to protect him. "Your Excellency Monkey King, may I ask what's going on with this door?" Only now did Yun Yang finally ask this question. Just as he asked the question, he suddenly froze. Because at this moment, countless strands of karma chi inexplicably flew into his divine sense space. While Yin Yang was pleasantly surprised, he sensed that the firefly flags that he had harvested this time were unprecedentedly rich, gushing into him like there was no end to them. As Yin Yang's thoughts raced, he quickly turned his head to look at the many beast kings who were slaughtering the demons. His heart was filled with a sense of absurdity. Needless to say, the source of this sudden karmic chi was the countless demons that the beast kings had killed together. The karmic chi rushed in like a tsunami. Chapter 12:16. The Chi of Karma. He was completely unprepared for it. Yin Yang was dumbfounded for a moment. But what kind of explanation was this? Yin Yang was stunned and immediately tried to recall. When he had thrown out that broadsword, the beast kings had killed the demonic beasts, but there had been no karmic retribution. Now, the weapons were still the same, and the ones fighting were still the beast kings. The ones controlling the weapons hadn't changed, and the weapons hadn't changed either. How could there be karmic retribution? Was it because he had given the chi of vitality? If there was a difference between the two times, it would probably be the difference in the chi of vitality that had led to this shocking change. Did this mean that there had been such a change after he had given the chi of vitality? That's about it. Yin Yang pounded his chest in regret, causing a string of nagging. Should have realized it earlier. Why didn't I realize it earlier? I should have realized it earlier. As he realized it, he could not help but recall that there had been two similar incidents in the past where the chi of karma had returned. However, the amount of chi of karma had been too little and there had been no more after that. Yin Yang had not paid attention to it because the amount was too little. Now that he thought about it, it was the two people he had given the chi of vitality back then, Song Changgong and Li Yisin. These two old seniors must have done something to repay him with two streams of chi of karma. However, the two old seniors were obviously not people who liked to fight. With their status, there were even fewer people who needed them to fight in the battle for the Celestial Luck Banner. Therefore, they had not had the chance to fight since then, so there had been no more chi of karma. It must be so. Combined with the chi of karma now, Yin Yang was finally certain. Yin Yang felt like crying from his stupidity. If he had discovered this earlier, he would have improved by leaps and bounds a long time ago. He did not know that the Monkey King beside him was looking gloomy. What did this sect leader Yun mean? He had asked him a question just now and he had hurriedly started to explain. However, when he looked up after explaining for a long time, he looked like he was daydreaming and obviously did not listen to a word. He had wasted half a day's worth of saliva. Moreover, he was lost in thought for a very long time. I couldn't bear to look at his remorseful face. After a long while, Yin Yang finally snapped out of his trance. His gaze when he looked at the Sky Demon's gateway was sparkling as if he was looking at a priceless treasure. Good stuff. This was definitely a rare and valuable item. If I was here every time every door opened, wouldn't that be awesome? In just a short while, he had killed no less than thousands of demons. Just thinking about it made him happy. Monkey King, please speak. Yin Yang composed himself and said with a smile, my apologies, my apologies. I was distracted just now. The Monkey King cursed in its heart. You're clearly out of it. However, there was no other way. The person in front of him was the great benefactor of all the Xian beasts. No matter how impolite he was, he had to accept it. He could only repeat it from the beginning. However, there were some things that were naturally like telling a story, full of enthusiasm. But after saying it once, if the other party said, I didn't hear you, please say it again. This kind of feeling could often make people depressed to death. However, it had to be said that the feeling would only be more uncomfortable and awkward. Back then, when the bound of universe was first judged, there were only mystical beasts, not demonic beasts. At that time, there was an almighty being of the universe who was the greatest senior in the history of the Holy Land of Tianfa. It was said that this senior was very close to the Lord Sovereign who created the bound of universe. Their relationship was so good that they could sleep together. This is how I describe it. Listen carefully. The Monkey King scratched its ears and cheeks, as if trying hard to fill in something. I understand. I'm done with it. Yin Yang nodded solemnly, thinking to himself, good enough to wear the same pants. This monkey is uncultured and has a limited vocabulary. What kind of description was sleeping together? If it could really be described in that way, wouldn't it be that and that? This monkey really didn't understand the ways of the world. Our greatest senior set a rule for the deities of the Holy Land of Tianfa. The Beast Kings of the Holy Land of Tianfa will never leave Tianfa in this lifetime. Yin Yang was stunned. Why is that? At that time, this senior said, as long as the Beast Kings don't leave Tianfa, they're still Beast Kings. Once they leave the land of Tianfa, they'll attract humans into the Holy Land of Tianfa. Once someone steps in, Tianfa will no longer be Tianfa. Unless the entire bound of universe is at the juncture of life and death, the deities of the Holy Land of Tianfa will never be allowed to walk in the mortal world. It was obvious that the Monkey King's eyes were filled with a strong longing for the outside world. However, it was more of a reverence towards this rule, not daring to cross the line. At most, it would only think about it in its heart, that's all. I see. No wonder there are so few high-level kings of mystical beasts in this world. So this is the truth. Legend has it that after an unknown number of years, a peerless great saint of the demon race suddenly appeared in the bound of universe. He crossed the starry sky and fought with the local aborigines. No one could defeat him. The commotion caused by that battle was extraordinary, directly shattering half of the bound of universe. In the end, Senior Monarch appeared and fought with this great saint of the demon race. At the last moment, this great saint of the demon race broke through the void with a strike of his staff and shouted, I have no intention of dominating the continent, but there are thousands of ways of Tao. I have to leave a path for my people to transcend. I can't kill them all with just a few words. He shouted and said, in the 3,000 reincarnations, I will only strike once, to fight for a chance of survival for the demon race. I hope that Monarch will give me some face. I will owe you a favor. After the great saint of the demon race finished speaking, he roared and left. As for that rod of his, it was left in the bound of universe. It was said that Lord Monarch pondered for a long time and said, "It's good that there's a threat." After saying that, he left without a care. After another few thousand years, the golden rod that pierced through the heavens and the earth suddenly disappeared. After that, the heavenly demon passageway appeared in the void. Billions of demons descended upon the bound of universe. Yes, that is where the current demon race originally came from. Oh, so that's how it is. I really wish I could have been born a few years earlier so that I could personally witness such an extraordinary battle. Then could this door be? However, during the battle, the great sage's staff pierced through the desolate battlefield and the land of heavenly punishment. It was because of that staff that he created an eternal heavenly demon passageway. Senior Zhu tried everything he could to destroy that passageway, but he couldn't. This is the Sky Demon Gateway, the passage that connects the demon realm and the bound of universe. Mobile Reading Access, M. Chapter 12-17. The Monkey King looked at the celestial demon gateway that was still fighting and said in a low voice, "Although it is a passage that connects the two realms, this passage has been restricted by Lord Monarch. Once a demon or human with a cultivation base surpasses the royal saint enters this passage, the passage will collapse immediately. The Xian beasts of my Tian Fa Holy Land will be responsible for guarding the heavenly demon channel from the moment it appears. We will not allow the demon race to cross the border. Every 100 years, the demon race will accumulate enough energy on the other side of the celestial demon gateway and open it to connect the two realms. At that time, hundreds of millions of demons will gather there to attack the celestial demon gateway. As long as the demons break through our defense and gain a foothold here, with the demon race's manpower, they will be able to occupy the entire Tian Fa Holy Land and then the entire bound of universe. The Tian Fa Holy Land is rich in resources, most suitable for the mystical beasts or the demon race to thrive. Once the demon race successfully occupies this place, the day of the bound of universe changing hands will not be far. At that time, it will be a catastrophe, the end of the bound of universe. Therefore, as long as the Tian Fa Holy Land is not destroyed, we must guard the celestial demon gateway, so that the bound of universe can have a future." The Monkey King's eyes were bright. This is the mission given to us by the Tian Fa elders, and it is also our mission. Against the demon race, the human race will be responsible for the defense of the Blood-Soul Gate, while the Tian Fa Holy Land will be responsible for guarding the celestial demon gateway. The mission of the Tian Fa Holy Land is to protect the human race, to protect the stability of this continent. Even if we have to fight to the end of our descendants, to the end of our bloodline, we will not hesitate, we will not turn back. Hearing this, Yun Yang was in awe, his face solemn. He thought of the vast continent behind him, the ordinary people living in peace and contentment, the orderly living environment behind him. Looking at the countless mystical beasts fighting in front of him, these beasts would never be able to take a step out of the Tian Fa Holy Land. Who among the hundreds of millions of people behind him knew that there were so many unknown heroes hidden here? Did he ever know that behind his peaceful life, these profound beasts were bathed in blood and killing each other for many years? This was called benevolence, righteousness and benevolence. You've worked hard. Yin Yang was silent for a long, long time before he finally uttered these 3 words. He only felt that these 3 words were as light as a feather, but at this moment, they were as heavy as 1,000 caddies, unable to bear the weight. The Monkey King grinned. Not at all, not at all. We're actually quite willing to fight. After all, it's too boring to stay in this forest all year round. If it wasn't for the fact that the battle that happens once in 100 years is too tragic, we'd like to come here a few more times. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly and did not speak. He recalled the time when he had just arrived. The neatly arranged flying mystical beasts in the sky had charged down without hesitation. Their wings had covered the sky, reflecting the sunlight and emitting tens of thousands of golden rays. That violent rumble. The longing in his eyes. After the self-detonation, countless profound beasts had risked their lives to snatch out countless tail feathers that had long since been tattered beyond recognition. Tian Fa Holy Land. Yin Yang murmured to himself. Initially, we had a tacit understanding and even looked forward to the 100-year battle. After all, it happens once in 100 years. After that, there will be 100 years of stability and another 100 years of survival. However, the opening of the Gate of Sky Demon this time is 20 years earlier than the previous 100-year period. As a result, our manpower, resources are all unprepared, especially now that the kings of the Holy Land are not here. The combination of various negative factors has caused our situation to be unprecedentedly bleak. The Monkey King looked puzzled. But, why did it open earlier? In the past millions of years, it has always been 100 years without any difference. Why did it open earlier this time? We really didn't make much preparation. The Monkey King was a little depressed. If the kings hadn't gone to the Pond of Holy Light, we wouldn't be so miserable even if we were caught off guard by the demon race this time. Yun Yang's heart skipped a beat. That was right. If it only opened once every 100 years for millions of years, then why did it open earlier this time? Since it had been open for millions of years, not to mention 20 years earlier, even if it was only 2 hours earlier, it would still be very unusual. A sentence suddenly appeared in his mind. It was what Zhang Wufei had said. A few people from the demon race would come in every once in a while and abduct many disciples from middle-class or lower-class celestial luck banner sects. Yin Yang mumbled in his heart, could this change be related to that matter? At the same time, the Gate of Sky Demon changed again. Demonic chi rose rapidly from the other end, as if it had condensed into a solid substance. Golden radiance expanded rapidly as far as the eye could see. It was a great demon that had reached the realm of the demon race's holy emperor. It was fighting with all its might. The bear and tiger kings each held a machete in their hands, one on the left and one on the right. They swung their machetes with all their might, slashing out again and again without stopping. As for their opponents, the saint emperors of the demon race, they used 2 huge hammers that were over 100 feet long. They were using heavy weapons to fight heavy weapons head-on. Each time the machete landed on the giant hammers, sparks would fly in all directions. The sound of impact was deafening, like thunder from the 9 heavens. Yin Yang could already tell the outcome of the battle in the blink of an eye. Although the 2 sabers were attacking in unison, the attacks were continuous, shards of weapons were already flying out of them. As for the opponent's hammers, there were also shards falling off from time to time, but they were massive and could not be completely destroyed in a short amount of time. They could hold their ground for a while. In other words, if the bear and tiger kings could not win quickly, they would only allow the opponent to stabilize their footing and truly step into the other realm. After a while, the Holy Emperor's Holy Emperor had already stepped half a foot out of the gate. Demonic chi surged again, soaring into the sky. The Monkey King squawked and stood up abruptly, obviously wanting to lend a hand. On the other side, countless mystical beasts pounced forward as well. Many of them had even activated their self-destruct mode, fighting to the death. At this critical moment, just as the Monkey King was about to fly to the rescue, Yin Yang sent a giant hammer over. It was at least 1,000 feet wide and weighed hundreds of thousands of pounds. Take this. The Monkey King reached for it but could not move it. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Bear! Over here!" The Bear King turned back and saw the humongous hammer. He was overjoyed and roared, "Hold this side!" Without saying a word, he retreated and rushed over. In the sky, 10 mystical cranes cried out and swooped down. With a loud bang, they had already self-destructed on the opponent's hammer. A total of 10 high-level mystical beasts with mediocre cultivation base had self-destructed at the same time. The power was extraordinary, causing the Holy Emperor of the demon race to take a step back. It was only a step away, but hundreds of bear tribe warriors charged forward with their chests puffed out, roaring as they charged forward without a care for their own safety. As far as the eye could see, a large amount of blood splattered onto the ground. However, the opponent's giant hammer was still not destroyed. It continued to hammer ferociously and madly, causing countless Xian beasts to be torn apart and sent flying away. Seeing that their holy emperor had gained the upper hand, the demon race's morale could not help but soar. They began to gather and charge forward. There were already too many mystical beasts that had revealed half of their bodies. Did this mean that the gate of heavenly demon was about to fall? Chapter 12:18. Seeing that the sky demon gate was about to be breached, the golden tiger king's eyes widened. Suddenly, he let out a long roar, and his body reverted to a huge golden tiger. He leaped up, and his body emitted a dazzling light. This was the prelude of a Beast King-level Xian beast self-detonation. Clearly, the Tiger King was determined to use his life to defend the line of defense, even if it was only for a moment. On the other side, the Bear King had transformed into a huge bear. He raised his huge hammer and roared, "Get out of the way!" Xian Qi erupted from his body, and he charged forward with his hammer. The Golden Tiger King, who was about to self-detonate, couldn't help but become wild with joy. It roared and gave way. When the huge hammer flew past its body like a meteor, the Golden Tiger King pounced on it and exerted its greatest strength to increase the hammer's forward momentum by at least 1-fold. The huge hammerhead smashed into the Sky Demon Gate with the momentum of splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. More than half of the Bear King's huge body also entered the Sky Demon Gate. The sound caused by this attack directly caused the entire Tian Fa Holy Land to shake. A mushroom cloud mixed with countless pieces of flesh and blood soared into the sky, dyeing the entire sky of the Gate of Sky Demon crimson. The two giant hammers of the demon race's Saint Emperor were smashed into smithereens without any resistance at all. The original owner of the giant hammers was directly smashed into smithereens. His spirit was instantly destroyed. He could not be more dead. At the side, the Monkey King and Lion King reacted with lightning speed. Before the shockwaves from the explosion had dissipated, they rushed out and grabbed onto one of the Bear King's legs, dragging him and his hammer back with all their might. The Bear King's head was already badly mutilated, and there were more than 100 wounds on it. The Bear King had used all his strength to push his Yuan Qi to the limit, and had even transformed his body to its greatest state. Only then was he able to wield the gigantic hammer that weighed hundreds of thousands of jin with his own strength. After unleashing that strike, he had already exhausted all of his strength. Bearing the shockwaves of the impact head-on had already caused him to suffer heavy injuries. Because of that strike, half of his body had been sent to the demon realm, and he had to endure even more attacks from the other side of the demon realm. If not for the Monkey King and the Lion King's timely rescue, he would have lost his life. At this time, the Bear King was naturally still alive. He stood up shakily with great difficulty, but he immediately fell backwards. And the greatest contributor to that strike just now, that huge hammer had landed on the ground with a loud boom, causing the ground to tremble. Even though Bear King was injured to this extent, he still did not let go and forcefully dragged it back. But then again, if not for this huge hammer blocking most of the attacks from the front, the Bear King would have really died with only half of his body in the Sky Demon Gate. He would have followed in the footsteps of the demon race Saint Emperor who had used the hammer earlier. With a thud, the Bear King's body fell to the ground, and fresh blood flowed out from his body. The Xian beasts behind dragged the Bear King back, and the Lion King and the Tiger King each wielded a huge machete, once again guarding the Sky Demon Gate. The demon race that was attacking crazily was once again suppressed back to the state before the huge hammer appeared. But the machetes in the hands of the two beast kings had already turned into saw blades, and only white light could be seen when the two beast kings swung them. Many of the demonic beasts that surged out were chopped into pieces, and they did not pose a threat. At this time, the Crane King and the Eagle King ran over frantically. "Do you still have more big weapons? Do you still have more?" The two beast kings were well aware of their own limitations. Although this sledgehammer was mighty, it wasn't something that they could use. In the entire demonic beast race, perhaps only the Ox King and the Bear King could barely use this sledgehammer. Before the two of them could reach him, Yun Yang had already flung out 2 more machetes with a shake of his hand. The 2 beast kings cheered, each of them carrying the machetes and flying up into the air, landing like lightning. Tiger and Lion, take a break. The 2 beast kings took over from the Tiger King and the Lion King, continuing their massacre. The Tiger King, the Lion King, the Ox King, the Crane King, the Eagle King, the Snake King, the Crane King, the Monkey King, the Eagle King. The Beast Kings took turns to attack, killing until the sky darkened and the world was dyed red. Compared to before, the sacrifice of the mystical beast warriors was much lesser. Batches of them fell and were carried back to be rescued. However, in times of crisis, there was no lack of mystical beasts who would rush forward and self-destruct. Yun Yang had gone mad as well, taking out medicine and weapons without a care for the consequences. He collected the weapon fragments continuously, and in the end, he no longer cared about the quality. Emmy, there's no need to be too detailed. Just smelt these together and turn them into a huge saber. It has to be heavy, it has to be big, and most importantly, it has to be sturdy and durable. Not only a huge saber, but a hammer, an axe, a mace, all of them are fine. As long as it's lethal enough, it's fine. Therefore, all kinds of crudely made weapons were used one after another, and the entire day passed in such a cycle. There seemed to be an endless number of demonic beasts on the demonic race's side. They only had one thought, and that was to charge out. In just one day, Yun Yang had almost collected the 300,000 pieces of karmic chi that he needed. Countless demonic race members were beaten to a pulp the moment their heads popped out, but there was still an endless stream of them rushing out from the gate of Heavenly Demon. The moon hung high in the sky. On the other hand, the battle at the gate of Heavenly Demon was still in full swing. Countless mystical beasts were lying on the ground within hundreds of miles of the vicinity, riddled with wounds. These were the mystical beast warriors who had been injured to the point where they could barely hold on to their last breaths. If it were not for Yun Yang's medicine that could make up for their deficiencies, these mystical beasts would not have died from their injuries even if they had survived the battle. Up until now, most of the mystical beasts that had gone on the battlefield and fought had retreated with such fatal injuries. If their injuries were slightly lighter, they would not have left the battlefield at all. Those who were really lightly injured looked ashamed and sad instead. Hundreds of the superior grade weapons that Yun Yang had created had been damaged so far. Emmy in his deific consciousness space was so tired that its leaves were drooping. It could not understand what this fellow had encountered outside. Wasn't it just a fight between a group of mystical beasts and mystical beasts? Let them fight beasts. What does it have to do with us? What does it have to do with Emmy? Why should it poke its nose into other people's business? Do you know how much chi this Lord Emmy has lost in this day? Do you think it's easy for me to condense strange metals? With the arrival of the next day's dawn, the attacks of the mystical beasts did not slow down. Instead, they became more and more frenzied. The demonic race probably knew very well that whether they could take down the gate of Heavenly Demon depended on this day. The gate of Heavenly Demon was only open for 3 days each time, and it was already the 3rd day now. It was the last day, the day of the final outcome. Chapter 12:19. On the side of the demons, the low-class demonic beasts gradually decreased. Saint King demonic beasts began to appear frequently. In just a short 15 minutes, a total of 3 Saint King demonic beasts had charged out together before retreating while riddled with wounds. On the other side, the dozen beast kings were so tired that their tongues were hanging out, panting heavily. The Crane King, who cared the most about his image, and the Monkey King, who was the most active, were all sitting on the ground, fighting for every bit of time they had. The million-strong mystical beast army was almost crippled. The Eagle King, the Crane King, the Peacock King, and the other flying mystical beasts roared angrily into the sky. In Tian Fa Forest, all the flying mystical beasts above the 9th level had gathered once again. The cries of the kings of the mystical beasts were already mixed with an indescribable sense of sorrow. These mystical beasts that had gathered now were the reinforcements of Tian Fa Holy Land. They were supposed to take over the positions of these mystical beasts who were fighting now, defending the gate of Sky Demon against the invasion of the demonic beasts. But now, this sudden and tragic battle had caused them to lose the chance to grow. With their current cultivation base, they could not be of any use in a head-on battle. They could only be used in groups to charge down and self-destruct to form an effective attack. Yin-Yang stood up. All the beast kings who are not participating in the battle, come over. I will instill the air of vitality again. Don't let those mystical beasts with insufficient cultivation base participate in the battle. The gains do not make up for the losses. The Bear King was shocked. Sect leader Yun, you can't do that. We are already grateful to receive such a heaven-defying art once. You've already become weak after using it once. If you use it again, I'm afraid, the Beast Kings knew that in such a situation, only the miraculous technique that sect leader Yun had used once could allow them to hold on for a while longer. However, they were too embarrassed to ask for more. The other party was already half dead after using it once. What face did they have to ask for more? Especially when the other party was still holding on to help everyone refine and repair their weapons. They had risked their lives, but the other party had also worked himself to death until now. Taking a step back, this matter was ultimately a matter of the mystical beasts. If they were to forcefully pull the other party in and lose their lives because of it, how could they bear to do so? Yin-Yang felt a sudden sense of shame as he said proudly, the Beast Kings are willing to risk their lives to protect this continent. How can I, Yin-Yang, be stingy with this bit of air of vitality? It's all right. Hurry up, I've already activated the secret technique. If no one receives it, it'll be a waste. I'm not joking. In that case, thank you very much. Crane King cupped his fists and turned his head to bellow, Eagle King and I will take turns here. You guys go over quickly and recover. The 8 major beast kings staggered over and sat on the ground. With a crashing sound, the blood on their bodies formed a line on the ground. The heavenly demon gate is like this. The Monkey King had a helpless expression. If all the high-level mystical beasts participating in the battle were to be given a stream of chi of vitality, it would be impossible even if they were to turn Yin-Yang and Emmy into dried corpses 180 times. However, although Yin-Yang would still feel his body being hollowed out and Emmy crying out that it could not take it, it was still within the range of what it could bear. The dozen or so beast kings who had regained their energy and vitality once again took turns to battle. With the help of Yin-Yang's painstaking and costly supply of medicine and weapons, the mystical beast army finally did not have to resort to the most extreme method of self-destruction anymore. Instead, they would retreat after a while and another tribe would take their place. The cycle repeated itself in an orderly manner. Compared to before, the battle was still intense and even more intense, but the casualties were much less than before. There was even some time to rest occasionally. Bear King, who had withstood another round of extreme output, staggered over. His golden fur trembled, and blood flowed out of the many wounds that were protected by Xian Qi at the same time, forming a large pool. However, now that he had a chance to catch his breath, this injury was nothing. As long as he quickly circulated his qi to regulate his breathing, his powerful body would naturally recover extremely quickly. He sat on the ground and sighed. This battle was really depressing. This time, the battle of the Gate of Heavenly Demons came suddenly without any warning. Especially the range of the Gate of Heavenly Demons that suddenly appeared is far greater than before. If we were prepared and sent the golden armored ants, wouldn't we have died? Bear King, who had endured another round of extreme output, staggered over. Crane King scolded jokingly, only you can think of that. Won't the golden armored ants die? If it's a real battle of attrition, the golden armored ants are invincible, but the other party will fight head-on with you stupidly. Once they're released, they don't even need to be like the wind and travel thousands of miles. As long as they're a little faster, the golden armored ants won't be able to catch up. If they run a little faster, the F*King ants won't even be able to see them. Bear King guffawed. The flying speed of the golden armored ants isn't bad. What's the use of having too few of them? Monkey King's words were concise and to the point. The other kings nodded in agreement. As they spoke, it was time for the defense to be changed again. Crane King and Monkey King led their tribe to take up the position. Golden armored ants? Yin Yang recalled the millions of ants he had seen, but those ants seemed to be silver in color and their individual strength was relatively limited. Could there be something else that the Beast Kings had said just now? The golden armored ants are a very powerful tribe in the Holy Land of Divine Punishment. Although the highest level ant king is only level 7, if they develop to a certain number, they're enough to kill any master in this world. They're considered invincible in another sense. The one who spoke was the Condor King, who had been silent all this while. The Condor King was covered in black feathers and looked mighty and domineering, but he was a man of few words and did not speak a single word. Now that he had suddenly spoken, it was filled with a sense of regret. Huh? Invincible in this world? Enough to kill any master in this world? Yin Yang asked in surprise, obviously doubtful of this statement. However, the Condor King only mumbled a few words and did not continue. The Lion King coughed and said with a smile, the golden armored ants are only first-level mystical beasts when they are born. As they grow, their individual strength will gradually rise to 5th-level mystical beasts. After that, it's relatively difficult for them to improve. However, the ants are known for their numbers. About 1 in 1,000 ants will mutate into a flying ant. The flying ants are much stronger than the other golden armored ants, be it in terms of strength or combat ability. They have at least the combat power of a 6th-level mystical beast. However, while flying ants possess strength that far surpasses their peers, they will also lose the fertility of their inherited bloodline. Thus, to produce flying ants cannot be done through normal breeding and can only rely on luck. But the process of accumulating individual flying ants is undoubtedly a very long one. Even after 100 years, the flying ant army of the golden armored ants is no more than 100,000. It's not very useful and can't help the situation. At this point, the Lion King sighed. They were supposed to be the strongest race in Tian Fa Holy Land, but because they violated the laws of heaven, they were punished to this state. Now, the golden armored ants are practically the weakest race in the entire Tian Fa Holy Land. Violated the law of heaven? What do you mean? And apt mobile reading access, M. Chapter 12:20. What do you mean? The Leonis King laughed like he was crying. Sigh, the golden armored ants ran amok in Tian Fa Holy Land back then, no one dared to provoke them. Later on, when their population reached 10 billion, the arrogant Ant King became arrogant and didn't allow others to call him Beast King. He gave himself a name, the Ant Monarch. The Lion King rolled his eyes. On the day he invited the kings of the Holy Land to a gathering and officially named himself the Ant Monarch, he was struck by lightning as soon as he stepped out of the door. The mighty Ant Monarch vanished into thin air. Oh, so this is Tian Fa? Yin Yang was obviously interested as he asked. If that was all, the golden armored ants might not necessarily have declined. After all, they were the tribe with the largest population in the Tian Fa Holy Land at that time. Even though their king had fallen, their foundation was still there. The true punishment of the heavenly Tao was that all the male ants of the golden armored ants lost their ability to reproduce collectively. This situation caused the female ants of the entire tribe to riot a few years later. Both sexes fought fiercely. After that battle, the entire golden armored ants only had a few million left. Then, after a few years, the surviving ants discovered that some of their abilities had recovered. But the previous war was too intense, and there were almost no female ants to be found. 99% of the male ants could only be single. During that period of time, even the old female ants who were missing arms and legs were worshipped by hundreds or thousands of male ants as queens. This also led to a change in the dominant position of the golden armored ants. In the entire Tian Fa Holy Land, the males are the kings of all tribes, but only the golden armored ants. The females are the kings, the masters of the family, and their words are final, the Leonis king sighed. The golden armored ants now, sigh, it's a long story. Such a brutal battle that concerns the future of Tian Fa Holy Land, yet not a single one of them came to help. They must all be kneeling in their own homes. As he spoke, he looked at Yun Yang with a gleam in his eyes. The corners of Yun Yang's lips twitched. Why are you telling me this when the war is in full swing? You've been nagging for so long just to tell me about this group of henpecked shrimps? Isn't that a little too disappointing? The other beast kings coughed and stood up. We're going to fight, then. They disappeared in a flash. Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, what does Leo King mean by this? Please tell me the deep meaning behind your words. A trace of awkwardness appeared on the Lion King's furry face. If it was a different occasion and place, would definitely not expose myself. This is a great humiliation to the Tian Fa Holy Land. It's not worthy for outsiders to know about it. But, this matter happened a very, very long time ago. Time is naturally not the reason. But after that incident, there was still a stone tablet left behind. Other than warning the golden armored ants, there was a final sentence. If one day, someone is able to bestow the Tian Fa Holy Land with life origin chi, at that time, the golden armored ants will be able to escape from this tragic fate, and there will be hope for them to regain their former glory. Leonis stammered. I see. Lord Leo King thinks that I'm that person. Yin Yang snorted. Leader Yun, I know that I'm asking too much, but the golden armored ants, other than their low individual combat power, are the best among all the tribes in the Tian Fa Holy Land in terms of reproduction. A single nest of eggs laid by a female ant can produce at least thousands of golden armored ants. Only then is the Tian Fa Holy Land at its strongest. With the golden armored ants guarding the Holy Land, it's truly foolproof. No matter which enemy invades, the golden armored ants can launch an all-encompassing attack from the sky to the ground. No matter how strong the enemy is, there's nothing to be afraid of. For example, the Gate of Heaven Demon can be guarded by the golden armored ants. Not only can it reduce the number of high-level casualties, it can also ensure that there's no danger. Ever since the golden armored ants courted their own death and fell into the abyss, until now, we can only use the much weaker silver armored ants as the defense line to separate the Tian Fa Holy Land from the outside world. The defense is not as simple as just a level of decline. Sigh, Leonis gave a heartfelt sigh. Yin Yang was puzzled. I understand Lord Leo King's painstaking effort, but even if I'm willing to help, how can I help them? I don't even have the slightest clue about this. Leonis was energized and said with a shake of his head and tail, what you need to do is actually very simple. There's a spring in the golden armored ants colony, and what flows in it is the black gold water. If other tribes drink it, they'll be poisoned and die immediately without exception, but the golden armored ants need to drink this water for years to survive and advance. Leader Yun, you only need to send a gust of the air of vitality into the spring. The reason why the golden armored ants have lost their ability to reproduce is because that expert has blocked the air of vitality. It's simple and direct to break it. We only need to connect the air of vitality with the air of vitality that's sealed in the spring, and everything will be solved. Leonis sighed. This method sounds simple, but how can it be so easy to obtain the air of vitality that's of the same origin as Tao? What's more, we can't even get out. Yin Yang thought to himself, even if all of you get out and search the entire bound of universe, you probably won't be able to find this air of vitality. If that's the case, it's really simple. After the battle at the Gate of Sky Demon is over, I'll make a trip there and remove this shackle for the golden armored ants. Yun Yang agreed readily. Now that he knew what the method was, it was really just a matter of lifting a finger. Thank you, Leader Yun, for fulfilling my wish. Leonis was not the only one who said this. Yin Yang looked in the direction of the voice and saw hundreds of golden ants the size of camels standing up from the ground on his left, bowing respectfully in his direction. Yin Yang could not help but be shocked as he turned to glare at Leo King. Didn't you say that these ants were serving their wives at home? Why did so many of them suddenly appear? What if I was putting on an act just now and deliberately put on a show? Did you think that the air of vitality was cabbage that could be given away just like that? Besides, these golden armored ants were really amazing. Although he had been busy all this time, he had still paid attention to the movements around him, but he had not discovered their ultimate destination. One had to know that with their relatively large size of ants, not a single sound could be heard in the holy land of Tian Fa that was covered in fallen leaves. This was, of course, quite an amazing thing. Leonis chuckled. Leader Yun, don't blame me, cough. The leading golden armored ant was especially large, its golden armor shining with a dark golden luster. It said in a low voice, Leader Yun, don't blame Leonis. We, the golden armored ants, have been in dire straits until now. We don't even dare to participate in the battle for the survival of the holy land of Tian Fa, lest the tribe be annihilated. How can we be considered top-notch mystical beasts? If we were humans, we would be cowards. This golden armored ant smiled bleakly and said, the golden armored ants are the most responsible in the holy land of Tian Fa. But now, we're living so aggrieved. As males, we're no longer masculine. As warriors, we can't fight. We've become a bunch of pitiful, henpecked worms. Just now, Leonis said that none of us came to participate in the battle, that we're all kneeling at home. This is very true. We, the golden armored ants, have been kneeling for hundreds of thousands of years, but we still can't stand up. Hundreds of golden armored ants suddenly knelt on the ground. Thank you, Leader Yun, for your help. Please, Leader Yun. The moment the golden armored ants knelt on the ground, Yun Yang actually saw drops of tears dripping onto the ground. He could not help but feel shaken. Don't worry. Yun Yang said with a sigh, I will do my best to accomplish this. The faces of over 100 golden armored ants were full of vicissitudes, endlessly desolate. They turned their heads and looked at the bloody battlefield, their faces a little twisted. Since when did the golden armored ants, who had never been afraid of battle and sacrifice, not even dare to enter the battlefield? This was an extreme humiliation. However, every time they proposed to participate in the battle, the other beast kings would resolutely disagree. With your current ability, there really won't be any more golden armored ants after this battle. No. There's no room for discussion. They were rejected like this again and again. When they returned to their nests after being rejected, the contemptuous gaze of their wives, as if they were looking at cowards, made the golden armored ants even more ashamed. This was how they behaved collectively. If there were other species that were similar to them, the golden armored ants would have been made a cuckold long ago. As males, in the holy land of Tian Fa, where the strong were respected, they had no dignity at all. It was truly a fate worse than death. On the other side, the beast kings led their armies and fought fiercely in waves. Demons and Xian beasts kept charging forward. There's only 4 hours left, it's the final time limit of this battle. Leonis looked at the battle situation as his eyes widened into round circles. In his hands, there were 2 giant hammers that weighed thousands of caddies. These 2 hammers were shiny and round. The Lion King especially liked them and was extremely fond of them. He had specially begged Yun Yang to forge them for him. He hoped that this pair of hammers could be kept until the end of this battle, and then be a new spiritual weapon to accompany him for the rest of his life. In a while, I'll show you my lifetime's ultimate skill. The King of Leo said proudly, Lion Rolling Silk Ball. Not a bad name. I'm really sorry for today, it's only this chapter. It's Women's Day. GT. Chapter 12:21. As time passed, the moment when the gate of Sky Demon would close was approaching. The beast kings of Tian Fa's expressions grew more solemn and solemn. This last moment was often the most dangerous. When one thought that the defense this time was foolproof, it was usually when a huge change would occur. The beast kings were well aware of this fact. The gate of Sky Demon had its rules. Those above the level of Royal Saint could not enter. However, that was only for the demon race. The Holy Land of Tian Fa, as the defense, did not have such a taboo. However, there were also corresponding concerns in this situation. If a wholly venerable level beast king entered the sky demon portal due to some kind of fortuitous encounter, and the other demons also sent wholly venerable level beast kings in, the energy balance of the passageway would be maintained and would not collapse. In other words, the other side could not enter, but as long as one side could enter, the other side could enter. This taboo was an absolute taboo that the Holy Land of Tian Fa dared not violate no matter what. If they sent their Supreme Saint and the other side's Supreme Saint came in as well, then the gate of Sky Demon would become a smooth path for the massive demon race. No one could bear the consequences of this. There was still an hour and a half left. 2 hours left. 35 minutes left. There was still an hour left. As time passed, the demon race in the gate of Sky Demon began to dwindle. It was as if the demon race had decided to give up on this battle for the gate. In spite of this, the beast kings of Tian Fa stood up one by one, their eyes fixed on the gate of Sky Demon unblinkingly. Their expressions were unprecedentedly tense, their weapons gripped tightly in their hands, ready to strike at any moment. Yin Yang was also highly anxious due to the tense atmosphere. He seized every second to create a few more weapons and place them where the Beast Kings could easily reach them. The Beast Kings were extremely tense now, to the point where they could not add even a feather. Yin Yang, who understood this well, was afraid of triggering a chain reaction causing adverse consequences even if he sent the weapons. Up until now, Yin Yang had refined and recast more than 100 heavy and super heavy weapons. The countless broken weapons in the Holy Land of Divine Punishment had basically been looted clean. Emmy was exhausted, feeling like its body had been emptied dozens of times. Yin Yang thought about it and forced Emmy to bring out a few more bottles of medicinal pills, bringing them all out as well. At a time like this, the more war resources he had, the better. So what if his body was hollowed out? Squeeze and squeeze again. If you're a man, don't say that you can't do it. While Emmy struggled to hold on, it roared, "Lord Emmy, have already dug everything clean, all right? What more do I have to squeeze? Also, although I am a rare divine being in a peerless spiritual plant, I am not a man." There was still a final quarter of an hour to go. With a low roar, the passageway suddenly revealed an extremely dense demonic aura. In an instant, the demonic aura rose and covered the sky. At the same time, 2 huge white jade-like horns appeared on the other side of the Sky Demon's gate. However, only these 2 horns could be seen on the other side of the demon clan's body, and no other parts could be seen. A low voice said, "Which beast king from the Holy Land of Divine Punishment is it outside this time?" "The single-horned old rhinoceros greets you." Outside, the usually audacious and fearless Bear King sucked in a breath of cold air. "It's a single-horned rhinoceros. A 4th-level Saint Emperor single-horned rhinoceros. And there were 2 of them." The Beast King's expressions turned even uglier. Yin Yang's expression also turned grim. Looking at the expressions of the Beast Kings, no one could match a 4th-level Saint Emperor single-horned rhinoceros. The disparity in levels was not something that a handy weapon and some supplies could make up for. Especially when the opponent had sent out 2 of them at once, the disparity was even greater. Suddenly, a long iron rod extended out of the cave without any warning. Although it was called a rod, the thickness of the rod was like the trunk of a towering tree that had been growing for hundreds or thousands of years. It was so thick that it would take several people to wrap their arms around it. It was extremely intimidating, as if it could hold up the heavens. Facing this sudden change, the Bear King, who was closest to the cave, roared like a madman. As it let out a hoarse roar, its entire body rapidly grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it had already become a towering giant. An unprecedentedly dazzling light burst out from his body. He roared repeatedly and rushed forward. The huge hammer in his hand was raised once again. With a roar, an earth-shattering hammer smashed down. For this strike, the Bear King had been accumulating power for a long time, and had already gathered the peak of his strength. In terms of strength alone, the might of this strike was even above the all-out strike from before. At the same time, the Ox King, Lion King, and Tiger King also roared and charged forward. Naturally, the demons on the other side did not know that their king was not present. But everyone on their side was well aware of this. They had been suppressing the other party with all their might so that they would not discover the actual situation on their side. If the other party had already discovered that their Saint Venerable was not present, they would have sent out a peak Saint Emperor to charge over. After all, the other party's Saint Emperor was also considered a high-level existence. They could not just charge over and sacrifice themselves for nothing. Fortunately, they had managed to conceal this process well. But now, at the final moment, the other party had already reached the point where they would fight with their lives on the line. Even if they knew that it was suicide, they still had to try. Because if they did not try, they would have to wait for 100 years. This was also the reason why the two Peak Saint Emperors had appeared and asked a question in the tunnel instead of charging out directly. If they could not defeat these two single-horned rhinoceroses head-on in the first wave, they would fall into a completely passive state. The situation would take a turn for the worse, and it would be difficult to reverse the situation. It was obvious that the demons were using the same tactic as before. They would first use numbers to exhaust the energy of the guards as much as possible. Then, in the final moment, they would use the full power of Peak Saint Kings to end the battle in a single stroke. A loud explosion rang out. The 6 experts collided fiercely at the entrance of the tunnel. The resulting shockwave almost blasted a huge hole in the sky. An angry voice rang out from within. "Where is the King of Tianfa? How dare you use such a second-rate character to humiliate us? How dare you?" There was anger in the voice, but there was also a sense of relief. Chapter 12:22. King Bear guffawed. Second-rate characters? So what if you're second-rate characters? Haven't you all been thrown back by me? You can't even win against a second-rate character. The so-called demon race's experts are getting worse with each generation. Will there still be a place for the demon race in this world 100 years from now? The Bear King laughed crazily, and his words were extremely sharp and sarcastic. However, they were not as incisive as his mouth. It had nothing to do with the grand scheme of things. Instead, it attracted an even more violent backlash. With a sneer from the other side, the 2 large metal rods appeared once again. With 2 loud booms, the sabers that King Leo and King Tiger had sent flying were deflected as they staggered. The moment the attack succeeded, the 2 huge horns also protruded out of the hole, and an extremely thick leg followed closely behind. That unstoppable momentum, coupled with the stomp of the leg, even caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake, making one's skin crawl. King Bear's sledgehammer came crashing down again, its force no different from before. An earth-shattering boom erupted in the air as it clashed with the opponent's metal rods. However, the opponent's metal rods were heavy and heavy. Despite being on the defensive, King Bear was not at a disadvantage. Although King Bear was already fighting with all his might, pushing his strength to the limit and even activating the arcane art of life, he still could not increase the results of the battle. The sledgehammer in his hand continued to crack from the opponent's counterattack. 2 majestic silhouettes with a towering demonic aura had already appeared at the door of Sky Demon's door. King Bear, King Tiger, and King Lion were furious. Although they tried to stabilize themselves, they were constantly being pushed back. The distance between them was growing further and further apart, to the point that they did not even have the space to self-destruct. Although there were flying mystical beasts that were willing to risk their lives to join in the battle and self-destruct, the disparity in cultivation base made the power of their self-destruction not even enough to make the 2 Saint Emperors of the demon race retreat. "Please." A desolate cry rang in Yin Yang's ears and his heart skipped a beat. Then, over 300 golden armored ants flew up in unison, charging towards the Sky Demon's door. The distance of thousands of feet was covered in the blink of an eye with a flap of their wings. This was the golden armored ant's request to him. "There's hope for the tribe. We can sacrifice ourselves. Boom! Just as the 300 golden armored ants reached the sky demon gate, the two one-horned rhinoceroses rushed out. With a sharp roar, the 300 golden armored ants roared at the same time, and a white light flashed. 300 golden armors exploded at the same time. Suddenly, a thick, golden, mysterious silk net appeared outside the sky demon door and completely covered the entire door. Yin Yang's eyes widened in disbelief. The last three words of the golden armored ant were obviously asking him to help their race, but that was for later. What truly shocked Yin Yang was the collective self-destruction of over 300 golden armored ants. Without a shred of hesitation, he left without hesitation. Yin Yang drew his saber. Sword transformation. Luck. He was very tired. He was about to reach his limit. However, he had no choice but to make a move. Layers upon layers of golden silk webs covered the entrance of the heavenly demon door. Crazy roars could be heard coming from within the silk webs, and loud rumbling noises could be heard. Again and again, protrusions protruded out of the silk webs that covered the entrance of the heavenly demon door, charging left and right. The defense of the golden silk net was undoubtedly strong, beyond Yin Yang's expectations, but it still had its limits. The golden silk net was about to collapse. However, 10 breaths had passed. The collective self-destruction of over 300 golden armored ants had bought 10 breaths worth of time. The Monkey King once said that the golden armored ant clan had tens of billions of members when they were at their most numerous. Judging from the strength of the 300 or so golden armored ants, it was obvious that they were far from the strongest combat strength of the golden armored ants. Then, in the past, the golden armored ants were able to firmly guard the sky demon gate without any mistakes. How could it be just believable? It was unquestionable and without any room for doubt. With a quick glance, Yin Yang was shocked to see that not only were the Bear King's hands bleeding profusely and his hammer stained red, the other Beast Kings were also covered in blood and injuries. The Tiger King's injury was the most severe. His right arm was twisted like a fried dough twist, pale white bones protruding from his flesh. In less than a breath's time, a large rod broke through the golden silk net with a loud bang. With a piercing sound like silk being torn, the golden silk net shattered and vanished without a trace. The eyes of the Bear King and the others were filled with despair. The Tiger King roared in despair, "Brothers, let us all be on our way." The Beast Kings did not waste any words nor did they hesitate. Each of them glowed brilliantly, just like the 300 golden armored ants from before. Other than self-detonation, they had no other way to deal with the other party. They did not fear death at all, but they were still terrified. They were confident that they could repel the other party after their collective self-detonation, but they did not have the confidence to kill the other party, especially the two fourth-level Saint Emperors from the demon race. There was still some time before the Sky Demon Gate closed, but that little bit of time was enough to cause terrifying consequences. In other words, even if they self-detonated, the Sky Demon Gate would most likely not be able to be defended this time. However, it was at this moment, when the Beast Kings had gone to the extreme but were still filled with despair, they saw an extremely dazzling sword light suddenly soar into the sky, illuminating the universe. Everyone looked over instinctively, only to see a small sun suddenly appear in the sky. Its radiance was incomparably dazzling. In the middle of the light, a voice that sounded like it was singing slowly said, "What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world?" Following that, the light suddenly blossomed with a kind of green brilliance. That was because the blazing white sword light was so dense that it created an illusion. That dazzling sword light was like thousands of thunderbolts exploding at the same time, shooting out a magnificent sword chi that was hundreds of feet long, like the Milky Way was pouring down to the mortal world, crashing down. Just as everyone's attention was focused on it, this sword light rushed straight into the Sky Demon Gate with an unstoppable force, entering forcefully. Following that, the hundreds of feet-long sword light that appeared in the sky also followed closely behind. Boom! Even the Bear King and the other Beast Kings outside the door felt as if their skin had been cut open. It was clearly just the remnant sword chi, but it was still able to cut and injure the powerful bodies of the Beast Kings. Facing the sword light head-on, one could only imagine the amount of damage they had to endure. It could only be described with the word horrifying. Facing this sudden shocking sword light were the two Saint Emperor single-horned rhinoceroses that had already rushed out of the Sky Demon Gate. These two fellows let out incomparably tragic cries. No, it should be said that after the first syllable, they suddenly stopped. Abruptly stopped. That incomparably sharp sword chi instantly filled the entire Sky Demon Gate. LT, GT. Chapter 12:23. The dazzling sword light surged forward. It was like the scorching sun high up in the sky, shining on sporadic snowflakes. The two single-horned rhinoceroses only managed to make a few sounds in that instant before they were reduced to mincemeat. The powerful sword chi did not slow down even after killing the Fourth Order Saint King. It continued to sweep through the heavenly demon door like a dragon. A series of miserable cries resounded through the sky as blood poured out of the heavenly demon door like a waterfall. The corners of the Beast King's mouths twitched, their eyes and mouths slanted. Just how many demons had been killed by that sword? Why was the river of blood that flowed out like a waterfall? Moreover, it was the kind that flowed endlessly and endlessly. The screeching of the sword energy seemed to be continuing, but the cries on the other end seemed to be 1,000 feet away from the tunnel. The next moment, the majestic sword light flashed again. Yin Yang's robe had turned crimson purple as he retreated. Only the sharp sword in his hand was still gleaming with a chilling glint. However, when he was hundreds of feet away, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were shut tight as he fell straight to the ground, unconscious. With Yin Yang's current cultivation base, it was impossible for him to unleash such power. The strike just now was the culmination of Yin Yang's cultivation base, the chi of endless vitality, the mystical chi that he had been accumulating for a long time, in addition to the 13 streams of air of vitality that Emmy had squeezed out with all its might and the power of its soul. All of these had been unleashed at the same time. This was the fiercest attack Yin Yang had ever unleashed in his life. At the same time, it was also the highest output he had ever exerted in this world. At this critical moment, Yin Yang had no other choice. With his cultivation base that had just broken through to first-level Saint Emperor Pinnacle, it was impossible for him to defeat two fourth-level Saint Emperors at once. The only thing that could work now was this one move. Yin Yang would give it a try with everything he had. Yin Yang had always known that the spiritual chi required for this move was too much. If his cultivation base was too low, he would not be able to unleash the effect, far from being able to help the current situation. Moreover, his opponents were two fourth-level Saint Emperors. Yin Yang was even worried that he might not be able to hurt his opponent even if he were to unleash his full strength. Therefore, Yin Yang had decisively drained all of his spiritual energy and everything that Emmy could provide to the original owner. He had unleashed this move with an extreme decisiveness that even he himself hadn't expected. After launching this move, the only thing he could do afterwards was to follow the momentum of the sword and charge forward. At this time, the Sky Demon passageway was filled with demon race members. These demon race members were all ready, waiting for the two single-horned rhinoceroses to break the passageway. Then, they would immediately rush out and rush into the Tian Fa holy land that the demon race had yearned for generations. The demons were squeezed one by one, and it was not just one against one. The space that was supposed to be able to stand two people was now filled with 3 or 4 bodies. Amidst the densely packed demons, Yin Yang broke through the single-horned rhinoceros with a swing of his sword, killed it, and slashed it into pieces before charging in. Like a bulldozer, he pushed forward with irresistible force and unstoppable courage. Wherever it passed, all the demons were minced into dust without exception. There were no exceptions. Yin Yang's charge could have covered at least 20,000 feet in the spacious passageway, but faced with the densely packed demons that were squeezing the passageway, Yin Yang had only managed to cover 1,000 feet before his sword energy was depleted. In spite of this, Yun-Yang understood that this 1,000 feet charge would have killed at least tens of thousands of demons with this single slash. It was too densely packed. Then, he felt lethargic, as if he might not be able to hold on at any time. He might be out of breath or even out of energy. Decisively, he mobilized the last bit of energy he had left and charged back. The demons in front of him in all shapes and sizes were dumbfounded, unable to react in time. They were still squeezed in the passageway, feeling uncomfortable and wanting to curse, but in the next moment, there was only emptiness before them. Everything had happened so suddenly and inconceivably. How did more than half of the demon race demonic beasts in front of him evaporate? Where did they disappear to? Only the blood under his feet had suddenly reached his ankles. It was wet and slippery. There was also a human who had suddenly appeared, but he had already retreating to the outside of the Sky Demon Gateway. All the demonic beasts only felt a blur in front of their eyes, and then there was nothing else. Chase. Charge. How to chase. How to charge. Every demonic beast's legs had turned to jelly at this moment. After being stunned for a long time, the demons at the back who did not know what had happened could not hold it in and began to squeeze forward instinctively. Only then did these demonic beasts come to their senses. However, as soon as their feet moved, they fell to the ground and were trampled by the countless demonic beasts that were rushing forward crazily. Those who stepped on the demonic beasts in front of them were stunned by the scene in front of them. The further they went, the more terrified they became, and they shuddered. What happened? Why is there an empty passageway in front of me? Why are there no demonic beasts in front of me? And what is under my feet? Why did the passageway suddenly become so smelly and fishy? Outside. Quickly take care of Leader Yun and bring the rest of the medicine over, quickly. King Bear's lips trembled as he roared, "The rest of you, follow me. There's only a little time left, we must defend it. We must defend it at all costs." Without exception, all the beast kings were pale and sweating profusely. Half of it was from fear, the other half was actually from fear as well. It was just that the first half was due to the loss of the Sky Demon Gateway, while the other half was due to Yun Yang's sword. There was actually such a sword in this world. Did they not hear Leader Yun's shout? What harm is there in slaughtering the family? This sword, if there was enough power to execute this sword, perhaps it could really slaughter the family? It was too terrifying. The Beast King's prediction of the demon race did not happen again. For the rest of the time, there were only sporadic demonic beasts that emerged to fight again. Their combat power was not very high either, so the last bit of fighting was a waste of time. The rainbow light that the mystical beasts were anticipating suddenly disappeared. The heavenly demon door slowly shrank. In the end, only the head of a tiger demon could be seen roaring a few times at the entrance of the passageway before it was hidden in the colorful light. When I wrote this move, I obviously felt different from before. My state of mind was different. Apt, Mobile Reading Access, M. Chapter 12:24. The Celestial Demon Gateway had disappeared completely, leaving behind only the mess outside. The moment they confirmed that the Celestial Demon Gateway had disappeared, the dozen or so kings of the mystical beasts sat down on the ground in unison. Looking at the devastation, they heaved a sigh of relief. What followed was a deeper sorrow. The price that the Holy Land of Tian Fa had paid in these 3 consecutive days of battle was not only extremely huge, it was unprecedented. In this battle, the strongest forces of the Tian Fa Holy Land were still at the Holy Light Pond, unable to rush back to participate in the battle. As the second strongest forces, although all of them were still alive, and none of them had died, every single one of them had used their secret arts more than once in this battle. If they did not have any other opportunities, it would be extremely difficult for them to make another breakthrough in their cultivation. Their losses were equally heavy. And the middle and high-level forces were completely wiped out, with not even a single one of them remaining. The hundreds of thousands of middle-tier and higher-tier mystical beasts in the Holy Land of Tian-Fa were the backbone of the Holy Land for the next hundreds or even thousands of years, but more than 100,000 of them had perished in this battle. And this was just a rough calculation. There were also the 300 golden armored ants that had self-destructed at the last moment, creating an opportunity to block the passage. However, the top-tier forces of the golden armored ants had also been wiped out. The battle was won. But what about the future? It was still possible for the survivors to hold on for hundreds of years, but what about 1,000 years later? By then, there would be a lack of pinnacle combat power. Bear King and the others were at a loss, without the slightest joy of victory. As for Yun Yang, he had fallen into a deep coma. It was not that he had never exhausted himself before, but it had never been as thorough as this time. This time, from his body to his soul, mystical chi to spiritual chi, even Emmy's energy was extracted by him. He was currently unconscious, blood still gushing out of his mouth. The only thing that could comfort him was perhaps the chi of karma that was still rushing into his deific consciousness like a tsunami. On Emmy's fifth leaf, a sharp lotus leaf was quietly rising. Not only was Yun Yang exhausted from this battle, but Emmy was also exhausted like never before. Its usual vigor was completely gone. However, Emmy's sixth lotus leaf was slowly growing under the infusion of the abundant air of karma. Its growth speed was unprecedentedly fast. Yin Yang had been unconscious for a whole day. It was in this short span of time that the sixth lotus leaf had grown from a tiny sprout into a huge, thick leaf. Moreover, the karma chi that he had obtained this time was not exhausted yet. From this to the other, it wasn't difficult to imagine exactly how much karma chi had been created in these short 3 days of slaughter. Furthermore, other than the last wave, the karma chi that he had obtained before this was obtained indirectly with the help of the Beast King. If all the beasts were killed by Yun Yang alone, not only would Emmy's sixth lotus leaf be completed, it might even be able to improve its seventh leaf. This was only a beautiful fantasy. Even Yun Yang himself dared not have such extravagant hopes. It was only the last wave that lasted less than 10 breaths. When Yun Yang was done with his maximum output, he had almost died of exhaustion on the other side of the demonic realm's door. If it were not for Aunt May's unparalleled sword skill, if it were not for the last bit of energy he had left, he might have been buried in a foreign land. No, he would have died without a complete corpse, not even his bones. A soft boom resounded in the deific consciousness space. The entire space was quickly filled with an endless, dense purple chi, which finally attached itself to Emmy. Aya, as if Emmy had been reborn, it was so happy that it danced and waved its vines in the air, whipping Gigi that was snuggling up to it. Gigi fled in all directions, crying out in grief and indignation. "You're happy, you're happy. This is a good thing. Why do you have to hit me? What is this? We're good friends, shouldn't we celebrate together?" On the other hand, the dense karma energy was still surging in endlessly as if there was no end to it. Emmy was exhausted after the past few days. Naturally, it did not hold back at all as it devoured the karmic chi that it rarely collected. Yin Yang, who was directly involved, knew nothing about this because he was in a deep coma. There was still a long way to go before he could regain his consciousness. The Beast Kings who had been watching over Yun Yang were surprised to witness something strange that they had never seen before in their lives. Yun Yang was now in a deep coma, a coma due to exhaustion. There was no doubt about it. Everyone knew it very well. If one wanted to cause such a state, then one's internal organs would definitely be shaken, one's profound energy would be destroyed to the limit, one's soul would be overdrawn, and even one's vitality would be exhausted. Moreover, falling into such a state of unconsciousness would naturally cause one's body to be in an extremely weak state. Logically speaking, it was normal for him to not wake up for half a year or even a few months. It was not impossible for him to be unable to recover for the rest of his life and fall into an eternal slumber, ending his martial path. Since the beginning of time, there were many such examples in the bound of universe. Therefore, the Beast Kings were grateful and ashamed of Yun Yang's injuries, but they were mostly worried. Other than these thoughts, no one would have thought that sect leader Yun would wake up and regain his consciousness in such a short period of time. However, the reality was, a situation that was even more unusual and unbelievable than waking up immediately occurred. The situation was that sect leader Yun, who was in a deep coma and had yet to regain his consciousness, did not show any signs of weakening. Instead, his aura was rising steadily. Other than the initial period of weakness, he began to rise step by step, as if he was ascending to the heavens. Each of the Beast Kings remembered clearly that sect leader Yun's cultivation base was only at the first level of Saint Emperor before he fell into a coma. However, after he fell into a coma, his aura that was supposed to be weak only lasted for a very short period of time before it rose rapidly to the second level of Saint Emperor. This was already shocking enough, but if one were to look into it, it might not be completely unfathomable. For example, Yun Yang had a strong foundation, and now that he had killed countless demons, including 2 fourth-order Saint Emperors, it was still reasonable for him to have a breakthrough. It was not completely unfathomable for him to have a reason for it. Putting aside the fact that Yun Yang had just advanced to the first level of Saint Emperor not long ago, it was barely logical. However, what happened next was completely illogical. Yun Yang had just advanced to the second level of Saint Emperor not long ago. It had only been less than a quarter of an hour when another aura of a cultivation base breakthrough appeared. Hiss. The Beast Kings sucked in a breath of cold air. Finally, this part has ended. GT. Chapter 1225. Initially, the group did not even think about Yun Yang. They even thought they were smart enough to think that someone else had coincidentally broken through at this time. However, after a round of searching, they were shocked to find that Yun Yang had advanced to the third level of Saint Emperor. The third level of Saint Emperor was far from the main point. It only paused for a moment before it broke through to the fourth level. Just when everyone was racking their brains, even thinking that Yun Yang was actually expending a large amount of life force and that his current breakthrough was just an illusion, that he could die at any time, the person who was suspected to be on the brink of death once again advanced steadily, all the way to the pinnacle of Saint Emperor. Then, the bottleneck of the supreme saint level that had been regarded as the greatest obstacle in cultivation since ancient times disappeared with a soft crack. It was also at this moment that Yun Yang's aura completely blended into the heaven and earth. With the cultivation base of the Beast Kings present, they could no longer detect his cultivation base level. How could a person who was exhausted and unconscious break through consecutively? Was this the blind spot of the cultivation model, or was it a personal mistake in cultivation? This was truly worth discussing. Not only had the Beast Kings never heard of such a strange thing in their lives, it was something that had never happened since the beginning of time. Everyone was at a loss, not knowing what to do. However, looking at Yun Yang's face that had regained color, it was obvious that all his injuries had healed, or at least improved significantly. Currently, he only looked like he had fallen into a dormant state due to exhaustion. His body was definitely fine, and it was not a terminal lucidity. How strange. Lion King grabbed his 2 bright silver hammers. From the beginning to the end, Lion King did not have the chance to show off his life's unique skill, the rolling lion ball. It had to be said that this was the greatest regret of all onlookers. It is indeed strange. Bear King grinned. Wait patiently. Take good care of him. Crane King sighed and said, the Holy Land of Tian Fa owes him a favor bigger than the heavens this time. We won't be able to repay this favor even in this life, the next life, or the next life after that. Despite saying so, the Beast Kings all heaved a long sigh of relief. Finally, they had managed to hold on. 3 days later, Yun Yang slowly woke up. As soon as he woke up and regained his senses, he immediately felt as if his head was about to explode, and his head was splitting apart. It was not the usual discomfort that felt like an explosion. His mind was filled with too much information. The information that had just surged in and had yet to be sorted out was too much, too messy. Even Yun Yang's head could not handle it, so he felt bloated and uncomfortable. In other words, it was a splitting headache. What's going on? For a moment, Yun Yang could not help feeling a little confused, but he soon realized how different he was. An indescribable ecstasy washed over him. It was unimaginably powerful, as if the world was within his grasp. Yun Yang wanted to jump for joy to vent the boundless joy he was feeling right now, but he quickly suppressed all his emotions and stood up with a flip. Now was not the time to think about this. Has the Sky Demon Gateway been secured? Yun Yang opened his eyes and asked hurriedly. It's safe, it's safe. Hearing this, Bear King's tears almost fell again. In the next moment, Crane King gave an order. Facing Yun Yang, who had just sat up, he said, "All mystical beasts in the Holy Land of Tian Fa, listen up. Bow." The 12 beast kings took the lead, and the countless wounded mystical beasts behind them bowed with one hand on their chest. "Thank you, Sect Leader Yun, for your righteousness and help. Thank you, Sect Leader Yun, for turning the tide with a shocking strike at the critical moment. Sect Leader Yun deserves the greatest credit for this victory. The Holy Land of Tian Fa never makes promises easily, but today, we have to say one thing." Crane King straightened his body, and all the mystical beasts spoke in unison. "From now on, if Sect Leader Yun has any orders, the Holy Land of Tian Fa will not hesitate to risk our lives." Yun Yang sighed softly and said, "I'm ashamed. Crane King and all of you, you don't have to do this. Our goal is the same, to defend against the invasion of the demon race, to prevent them from entering the bound of universe, and to protect the peace and stability of the bound of universe. In this battle, the meager strength that I have contributed is nothing more than to benefit from the grand occasion. It is only natural. Speaking of gratitude, it should be me representing the humans of the bound of universe to express our sincerest gratitude to the generations of beast kings of the Holy Land of Tian Fa. If it wasn't for all of you guarding this land for so many years and eternally sealing the Heaven Demon's gateway, the bound of universe would have fallen long ago and become a paradise for the demon race. To the entire bound of universe, all of you are the greatest heroes." Yun Yang's voice was loud and deafening, each word clearly reaching the ears of the thousands of mystical beasts present. These mystical beasts stood quietly, their gazes heated, and many of their eyes reddened. The sealing of the Heaven Demon's gateway was a long experience that spanned countless years. The mystical beasts of the Holy Land of Tian Fa had contributed for a long time without anyone knowing. They had no regrets. For millions of years, more than tens of millions of mystical beasts had died here. But almost no one knew what they had sacrificed. Now, there was finally a day when a human like this spoke on behalf of the entire human race. "All of you are the greatest heroes." It was a short sentence, a few words in total, but it warmed the hearts of the thousands of mystical beasts, making them feel that their efforts were not in vain. "Thank you." Yun Yang bowed deeply to the beasts. "Although our races are different, humans and mystical beasts and humans will be the closest partners when it comes to dealing with the demon race. Thank you, Holy Land of Tian Fa, for all your efforts over the years. All of you have worked hard." Crane King and the rest stood quietly. Countless mystical beasts unconsciously puffed out their chests, many of their waists that could not stand up straight due to their injuries had straightened without anyone noticing. After a while, Crane King finally opened his mouth and said softly, "It's not hard. It's not hard for us." Countless mystical beasts howled at the same time, the sound waves surging into the sky, causing the clouds to swirl. Many of them had tears rolling down their cheeks. The war had just ended, and the Holy Land of Tian Fa had another 100 years of time, but it was also in a dire situation. Originally, the 100-year war had become the norm. The Holy Land of Tian Fa had long predicted this and had many countermeasures. However, this sudden war had too many unexpected changes. Whether it was manpower or resources, they had expended 100 times more than in previous wars. Even if they recuperated for 100 years, they might not be able to recover. It was because of this that Yun Yang stayed for another month. During this entire month, the Beast Kings had ordered the Tian Fa Holy Land's countless precious herbs and treasures of heaven and earth to be harvested, all piled up in Yun Yang's hands. Sect leader Yun, we know that these are all good things. But in our hands, they are not very useful. If we eat them raw, it will be difficult for us to unleash the way of Monarch Union, and we will be poisoned instead. Chapter 12:26. The Holy Land of Tian-Fa isn't suitable for refining pills and medicines either. Our cultivation system is fundamentally different from the mystical qi cultivated by humans. So, Sect Leader Yun, feel free to take all of them with you. Of course, if Sect Leader Yun is convenient and can share some of our healing medicine with us, we'll be eternally grateful. Yun Yang was duty-bound to agree to such a request without hesitation. Don't worry, Beast King. Yun Yang will take care of the mystical beast's recovery. The heaven and earth treasures provided by the Holy Land of Tian-Fa were rare species that were hard to find in the outside world. Even to Emmy, they were rare items. As the source of its mother's body, the older they were, the better. The heaven and earth treasures from the Holy Land of Tian-Fa were at least hundreds of thousands of years old. With such quality resources, Emmy's mystical ability could naturally turn them into countless medicinal pills. Not only healing medicine, but other things that could increase one's cultivation base, divine sense, soul, breakthrough realms, elevate realms, and upgrade one's innate talent could all be produced. There was as much as one could ask for. As for the spiritual medicine that Yun Yang had taken from the Holy Land of Tian-Fa, there were 3,900 types of them that he had never gotten his hands on before, not to mention the quantity. That was 3,900 types of them. From then on, it could be said that as long as it was a heaven and earth treasure, as long as it was a spiritual medicine, Yun Yang had it all in the bound of universe. Of course, there was everything here, except for those special species that could only grow in the special realm, such as those that could only grow in the coldest places, those that could only grow in the most poisonous places, and those that could only be found in the underworld. Therefore, when it came to the matter of healing the injured in the Holy Land of Tian-Fa, it had suddenly leveled up and there was still a large portion of Emmy left after the chi of karma had leveled up. It had agreed to Yun Yang's request without hesitation, which was a rare occurrence. In the following month, Emmy produced a massive amount of medicinal pills according to Yun Yang's request. However, Yun Yang had only given out a portion of them. It was not because he was stingy, but because if he had really taken out so many healing pills, it would only raise the suspicions of the Beast Kings. No matter how skilled the alchemist was, he would not be able to refine so many supreme-grade medicinal pills in a month's time. Other than the sea of medicinal herbs, Yun Yang had another gain as well, plenty of rare metals and metals. Other than the massive amount of medicine, Yun Yang also had another gain, a lot of mystical metals. The remnants of the mystical beast's weapons had been collected by the mystical beasts in that battle and passed to Yun Yang to be recast. Even if there were some that had been missed, they were few and insignificant. However, there were still many remnants of the mystical beast's weapons, piling up into a small hill that was 1,000 feet high. Mystical beast's weapons had their own uses. Even if they were in perfect condition, they would still, even if they were intact. The higher level the mystical beast's weapons were, the more limited they would be. Whether it was a mystical weapon or a demonic weapon, broken or in perfect condition, they were still made of various metals. These were all things that Yun Yang needed. As long as they were all of them, Emmy had a way to separate them into their most primitive form. Then, it would extract the essence within. Similar to the process of refining medicine, other than a small portion of the weapons that were reforged for Tian-Fa's mystical beasts, most of the rest belonged to Yun Yang. This was undoubtedly another windfall. Other than the two items mentioned above, Yun Yang had an even bigger windfall from this battle, the demonic cores of the mystical beasts. The mystical beasts in the Holy Land of Tian-Fa abhorred these things. Not only did they feel uncomfortable looking at them, they could not even bear to smell their scent. Therefore, the demonic cores left behind by the fallen mystical beasts all belonged to Yun Yang as well. Other than the shattered and self-detonated ones, Yun Yang had obtained a total of 130,000 demonic beast cores of various levels. This huge number was simply a sky-shattering amount of wealth. Yin Yang had originally wanted to ask, since you all hate demonic cores so much, where did the demonic cores you got from killing the beasts go? King Bear replied nonchalantly, where else? We're useless, so we gave them to the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th level fellows to practice on and beat them all up. Yin Yang felt like he was struck by lightning at this answer. Such a huge amount of wealth, yet you all gave it to the lower level mystical beasts to beat them up. Can you be any more wasteful? Other than the 3 items mentioned above, there were actually other items such as the demonic beast's fur, bones, and even the bodies of higher level mystical beasts that were of extraordinary value. However, Yin Yang had directly given up on this item. The battle had been too brutal. The mystical beasts had suffered heavy losses, but how much better could the demonic beasts have suffered? Basically, there were no intact bodies of the demonic beasts that had perished. Instead, there were piles of meat paste that could be seen everywhere. Naturally, there was no such thing as a complete hide or fur. Occasionally, some of the demonic beast's fur could be collected, but they were mostly the remains of saint kings and saint emperors. As for those of a lower level, there was basically nothing left of them. Yin Yang had already known that Tian Fa had suffered heavy losses, but during the 1 month that he had stayed in the Holy Land to refine pills and forge weapons, he had heard the reports of the various clans' losses. Only then did he feel shocked. Yin Yang could clearly see that every beast king was trembling when they heard the reports, their eyes brimming with tears. The Black Eagle tribe had self-detonated more than 7,000 mystical beasts of 9th level and above, and 600 king-level mystical beasts. As for the other flying clans, their losses were basically similar to the Black Eagle tribe. The Bear tribe and other different clans had lost more than 20,000 warriors. The Lion tribe and others had suffered similar losses. All in all, the Tian Fa Holy Land had lost more than 200,000 mystical beasts in the short span of 3 days of battle. After confirming this huge number, the beast kings of the various clans felt like their hearts were being pierced by a knife. This was the result of Yin Yang's participation in the battle from the 2nd day, participating in the treatment of the injured, providing weapons, and even replacing the beast kings to attack the gate of Sky Demon and turn the tide. Otherwise, this number would have been doubled. At the very least, the beast kings of the various clans would have fallen before the final moment arrived. A Pyrrhic victory. Bear King saw the huge number of casualties and his majestic body trembled like a blade of grass in the wind. A low, trembling growl escaped his throat. Tian Fa Holy Land, after this battle, we have lost all of our core forces. Crane King's face was also filled with desolation. 100 years later, or 70 to 80 years later, when the gate of Sky Demon opens again, at that time, he heaved a long sigh. The other beast kings' faces were also visibly dejected. It was obvious. This battle had caused the Tian Fa Holy Land to lose all of their core forces. There was no way for them to continue, and their strength was cut off. In the next few decades, there was no time for them to grow. When the war broke out again, they could only rely on their top forces to hold on, and there would be the additional danger of almost no rest. They could only keep holding on until they could not hold on anymore. But in such a battlefield where they were fighting with their lives at all times, who could fight for 3 days and 3 nights? If there was no replacement, no room for a buffer, with only the strength of the Tian Fa Holy Land's upper echelons, they might not even be able to hold on for a day. In the next 100 years of war, the fall of the Gate of Sky Demon was almost a foregone conclusion. Today is Brother Ling Mou's birthday. Let us wish Brother a happy birthday. Thank you, Brother, for your unwavering support these few years. Brother has worked hard. GT. Chapter 12:27. Yin Yang looked at the Beast King's distress and said softly, "Leave it to me to think of a solution for the next opening of the Heaven Demon's door." Crane King chuckled bitterly. "We thank sect leader Yun for his kindness, but what else can we do?" Yin Yang smiled. "The Holy Land of Tian Fa has so many treasures of heaven and earth, and all the kings have given them to me. If I don't think of a way to solve the Holy Land of Tian Fa's problem, it won't be right. I'll try to research and see if there's any medicinal pill that can improve one's aptitude. What pill can advance quickly without any consequences? What pill can improve one's cultivation base faster? Yun Yang's face was full of confidence and kindness. All these can be done by us humans, but it's rarely used on mystical beasts. In my opinion, it's still doable. Of course, there will be some pain during the process of consuming the medicinal pill. This is unavoidable. The eyes of Bear King and the others were as bright as the sun when they heard this. Sect leader Yun, are you serious? Crane King's voice was trembling. Of course. Yun Yang immediately thought of the cultivation base enhancing medicinal pills that Dong Qitian had refined for him. It was an exhilarating feeling. It was better to be happy alone than with everyone else. As for medicinal pills suitable for mystical beasts, even if the medicinal pills suitable for humans were not suitable for mystical beasts, there was still Emmy. As long as Emmy was willing to help, everything could be easily solved. With a thought, Yun Yang took out 2 small bottles. I have such spiritual medicine with me. I can try it and see if the medicinal pills used on humans to improve their cultivation base are effective on mystical beasts. Crane King gripped the 2 bottles tightly, his voice urgent. What level is it suitable for? Yin Yang said, when I use this medicinal pill, it's only suitable for heaven mystic level. After consuming it, one can cross a realm and advance to the level of supreme overnight. If it's consumed by a supreme, it can advance to the level of honor. However, the effect will be diminished when consumed by those above honor. Then, it can only advance by 2 levels at most. Of course, there's still a chance to advance to the level of saint. However, this possibility isn't high. In the path of cultivation, the further one goes, the harder it is to improve. This is how it should be. Crane King's eyes glowed. Enough. That's enough. He muttered to himself, our 7th and 8th grade Xian beasts are roughly equivalent to the sky Xian beasts of the human race. Moreover, most of the 7th and 8th grade Xian beasts did not participate in this battle. If the 7th grade Xian beasts can use elixirs to advance to the 9th grade Xian beasts, then they will have a great chance. If they are lucky enough to advance to the 9th grade Xian beasts, then it will be even better. If it exceeds the 10th grade. He grinned and said excitedly, then it's possible to make up for my shortcomings and make up for my shortcomings. This is a great thing, a great thing. The Crane King's mouth was very long. When he grinned, his upper and lower lips were almost 3 feet apart. His sharp mouth became like a pair of scissors, which was very comical. But at this moment, no one laughed. Everyone's expression was solemn and heavy. The results of the experiment were really good. It was unknown whether it was because the mystical beast's physical endurance far exceeded that of the human race, or some other reason. In short, among the mystical beasts who participated in the experiment, more than 20 of the 7th and 8th level mystical beasts leaped to the 9th level overnight, and 2 of them directly broke through to the peak of the 9th level. Only 1 mystical beast died because its body could not withstand the pressure. The Beast Kings were grinning from ear to ear at the result. The Beast Kings were all intelligent people. How could they not know that using medicinal pills to enhance one's cultivation base would be accompanied by a certain degree of danger? They had long anticipated the casualties of the mystical beasts who consumed the medicine, and even imagined that more than half of the mystical beasts who participated in the experiment would die or be injured. Now that only 1 mystical beast had met with an accident, it was truly a blessing from the heavens. According to the Eagle King's words, it's normal to encounter a certain degree of danger in the process of enhancing one's cultivation base with the help of medicinal pills. If one could reach the pinnacle just by sleeping, wouldn't cultivation be easy? Who would still be willing to work so hard? This medicinal pill is really effective. It's a divine pill. The Crane King grabbed Yun Yang's hand and refused to let go. Sect Leader Yun, we know it's difficult, but we won't ask for much. You just have to give us 100,000 or 80,000. The Bear King's large paw grabbed Yun Yang's hand and shook it repeatedly. 180,000. Yun Yang coughed. Although he could mass-produce this item and had never thought of hiding it from the Beast Kings right from the start, it was still a little too much for the other party to ask for 180,000 right off the bat. Idiot. The Crane King glared at the Bear King. What nonsense are you spouting? How can you say 100,000 or 80,000? He turned to Yun Yang and said with a grin, Sect Leader Yun, don't listen to this bastard. He only knows how to spout nonsense and doesn't know his limits. 100,000 or 80,000 is too much for us. We actually only need 10 or 20,000. He stared at Yun Yang's expression helplessly and was ready to change his words at any time. But finally, he said, that will do, 10 or 20,000. Yun Yang frowned as he calculated in silence. To be fair, this was not a small amount. Even if it was calculated based on the success rate of the Bound of Universe's most famous alchemist, he would not have to do anything else for a long period of time. He would only be refining pills all day long. If he still had the time to be distracted, it would mean that there was something fishy going on and it would arouse suspicion. It would be illogical. However, Yin Yang realized that he seemed to have overlooked an important point. He still had plenty of time, there was plenty of buffer. These medicinal pills did not have to be delivered in a few days, there was still about 100 years' time. If that was the case, 10 or 20,000 was actually not a lot. Yin Yang, however, had to pretend to think for a long time. After a while, he said, 10 or 20,000 then. I agree. I have some experience in the art of refining pills. As long as I'm given some time, I can still refine them. I'll send them to you in batches after this. It won't delay the Sacred Land's 100-year holy war. Right. I need a token that allows me to travel freely between the Sacred Land of Tian Fa. I might not have to come personally then. After all, it's 10 or 20,000 medicinal pills. I'll need at least 10 years to refine them all. Crane King's heart was filled with regret when he heard Yun Yang's words. In Crane King's mind, 10 or 20,000 was already too much. At the same time, he was trying to smooth things over for Bear King. After all, Bear King had asked for 70 or 80,000 pills. If he directly lowered the number to below 10,000, it would inevitably agitate Bear King. He was even prepared to reduce the number greatly after Yun Yang said that it was impossible for him to do it after asking for such an exorbitant price. In Crane King's mind, a reasonable number would be around 1,000 or 3,000 or 4,000. Even if it was lower, it would be acceptable. After all, anyone with a little common sense would know that the medicinal pills Yun Yang had offered were all supreme-class spiritual pills. Not to mention the Sacred Land of Tian Fa, even the famous Celestial Luck Banner upper-class sects in the Bound of Universe might not have many of them. Who would have thought that sect leader Yun had only hesitated for a moment before agreeing to it? He had even said that 10 or 20,000 spiritual pills could be completely refined in about 10 years. Could it be that he had asked for too little? Chapter 12:28. If he had known, he would not have stopped Bear King. Even if he could not get 70 to 80,000 pills, it would be great if he could get 20 or 30,000 more. Regret. It was too late for regrets. Without saying a word, Bear King slapped Crane King's head, causing him to stumble forward and almost bite the ground. Bear King's slap had succeeded, but he still scolded, "What the F***ck can you do? You idiot." Crane King was infuriated. Just as he was about to get up, he saw the other Beast Kings looking at him in disdain and scolding him together, "Idiot." Crane King's face twitched, but he wanted to cry. It was all his fault, but he could not defend himself. Yin Yang laughed. "Everyone, you don't have to be like this. I've gained a lot from your precious land this time, enough to refine countless medicines. No matter how many I refine, I'll give them to the sacred land first. Although the spiritual medicine to elevate one's cultivation base has practical value, it's not as solid as the cultivation base obtained through regular cultivation. The sacred land was forced by the situation, but I really don't need it for long. The Beast Kings smiled sheepishly. Sect leader Yun is right. We're inexperienced, we've made a fool of ourselves. Yin Yang stayed here for a month and basically treated all the injured mystical beasts. He was like a Buddha to all and was sought after by everyone. When the day of his departure came, he returned with 2 sleeves full of demonic wind. He also learned about the countless kinds of strange metals of the remaining demon soldiers, the almost astronomical number of demon cores, and the huge amount of karma energy he collected from killing countless demon beasts in this battle. What else could it be if it wasn't 2 sleeves demon wind? It was just demonic wind, there was no demonic chi at all. Sect leader Yun, if there's nothing important, why don't you stay a little longer and wait for our king's return? No matter what, you have to meet him before you leave. The Beast Kings tried to persuade Yun Yang to stay. However, Yun Yang had already made up his mind. After all, he had already spent a month and 6 days in Tian Fa. This period of time was not short. If he delayed any longer, he might really make a mistake. I do have something important to do, Yun Yang said. If I'm free in the future, I'll definitely return to the sacred land to drink and chat with all of you. What was the point of waiting for others to thank him? This way, when they meet again in the future. Hee. Wouldn't it be much better than accepting his thanks now? Bear King immediately interrupted. Speaking of wine, cough cough, sect leader Yun, don't forget to bring good wine for us the next time you come. Ha ha ha, all the Beast Kings roared with laughter. Yin Yang, dressed in his usual purple robe, left under the grand farewell of the mystical beasts from the Tian Fa Holy Land. This time, it was an inexplicable feeling that brought him to the Holy Land of Tian Fa by chance. Yin Yang still felt like he was in a dream when he thought about it. If it was purely based on his gains, the items he had obtained from the Holy Land of Tian Fa would be enough for the residents of 9 Supremes to spend lavishly for 1,000 years, and they would still be rich. Moreover, it was pure consumption for the next 1,000 years. There was no need for any further income. In terms of quality, the various treasures of heaven and earth that Yun Yang had obtained this time were more than enough to support a sect like the residents of 9 Supremes until the end of time. After all, any material here was a renewable resource. However, Yin Yang was not in the mood to sort it out. All his thoughts were now on the chi of karma that he had obtained, in his deific consciousness. They were all in the endless divine art that he had made great strides forward. Yun Yang suddenly realized that the extent of his improvement this time was unprecedented. There might not even be another improvement that was greater than this one in the future. This time, not only did his endless divine art break through to the 6th stage, even his mystical chi cultivation base had broken through to the pinnacle of 4th level Saint Emperor. He had directly ascended to the realm of Supreme Saint. Advancing from a first-tier Saint Emperor to the realm of Supreme Saint was already a huge leap, not to mention the fact that Yun Yang's current cultivation base was not a first-tier Saint Emperor, but a second-tier Saint Emperor. Such a huge leap was frightening and appalling to hear. The sudden increase in his cultivation base was something to be happy about, but Yun Yang was more concerned about the endless divine art. This cultivation method that was the hardest to improve had also made a huge leap due to this opportunity. With Yun Yang's current cultivation base, combined with the combination of his mystical chi cultivation base and endless divine art, even if he used, what harm is there in slaughtering the world, he would only consume 1/10 of his own power. In other words, a casual strike from Yun Yang now could almost reach the power of the strike that he had used at the risk of his life a month ago. Moreover, this was only the lower limit. After all, it was only 1/10 of the power, which was not much different from the usual consumption. How could such a shocking improvement not be ecstatic? Furthermore, Yun Yang's current rate of improvement had yet to end. The amount of karmic chi he had gained this time had caused the endless divine art, which was the most difficult to improve by leaps and bounds every day. Up until now, he had at least reached 1/10 of the 7th level of the endless divine art. It was unimaginable and unbelievable. Once he left the holy land of Tian Fa, Yin-Yang soared into the sky and turned into a cloud form. After he had hidden himself among the clouds, his mind entered his deific consciousness space. What greeted his eyes was the large leaf that had just sprouted from Emmy. Feeling Emmy's elation, Yin-Yang's heart was filled with joy. The lotus leaf was different as well. It had just sprouted, but it had already reached the stage of completion. The leaf was thick and wide, its color deep. It fluttered leisurely in the deific consciousness space, filled with a sense of serenity. The content of the sixth stage of the endless divine art was presented in the form of lines of golden words as usual, floating above the deific consciousness space before merging into it. I walk the path of the secular world, 3,000 worlds are leveled with a single slash. Who would question the merits and demerits of this life? The 6 petals of the golden lotus dye the sky red, that was the mantra of the sixth stage of the endless divine art. Yin-Yang chewed on each word, carefully pondering the meaning of each sentence. The true meaning of the divine art flowed endlessly into his heart like flowing water, turning into a deep memory and understanding that would never be erased. I walk the path of the secular world, 3,000 worlds are leveled with a single slash. Yin-Yang could not help but be fascinated by the boundless domineering aura within. 3,000 worlds are leveled with a single slash. This domineering aura is a level higher than slaughtering the entire world, Yin-Yang mused and murmured, but with my current cultivation base. I'm only at the level of a first-level supreme saint. How can I achieve the level of 3,000 worlds are leveled with a single slash? There's no comparison between the two, and there's no practicality. No, perhaps I should say that I'm still far from the level where I can unleash its ultimate power with this cultivation method, Yin-Yang pondered. The next moment, the golden words in the air disappeared. After a while, a silhouette slowly emerged, holding a saber in his hand. Other than the blurred face, everything else could be seen clearly. Every movement and every slight turn was pleasing to the eye, clear and distinct. The first form of the style was a saber that could not be traced even with countless complicated movements. After this stroke, a door glowing with a holy white light appeared in the starry sky. Inside the door was an endless purple mist. As for the second form, there was only the shape of a saber left in the vast starry sky after the gleam of the saber's light. It was the same one in 2 forms as before, imprinted directly into the deepest part of Yin-Yang's heart. In just an instant, Yin-Yang felt that he had been cultivating this saber style for hundreds and thousands of years and was already extremely familiar with it. With a single thought, the saber could be executed perfectly. The 6th form of the Destiny Blade is also 1 and 2 forms, but it's different from before when I study it in detail. Previously, I still needed to familiarize myself with it, but now, this style seems to be given directly. The moment I receive it, it's the moment I've mastered it. Yin-Yang looked at the name of the last form and could not help smiling. As expected. The first form of the Destiny Blade's 6th form, the Door of Tao, and the second form, the horizontal blade of the starry sky. Everything else aside, just the names of these 2 forms were filled with indescribable dominance. The chant for the 6th form of the Destiny Blade, the mundane world in dreams is difficult beyond dreams, the path of Tao is not easy. The saber crosses the heavens and the starry sky, the heroes of the world dare not speak. I've finally reached the 6th level. Chapter 12:29. With this thought in mind, Yin-Yang felt an indescribable sense of melancholy in his heart. Thinking of his own cultivation process, saber truth, destiny blade and endless divine art, it did not feel very difficult to grow from nothing, and it was even easier to go from the first to the second stage. It was only when he reached the 5th stage that he felt the difficulty. Overall, Yin-Yang had only spent about 2 years from the first stage to the 5th stage, and he had already completed it. However, it had taken him 6 years to break through to the 6th stage, and the resources he had consumed were far more than the previous 6 years. Judging from his current progress, the 7th stage that followed would be even more difficult. As for the 8th and 9th stage that followed, Yin-Yang could not imagine it. He did not even dare to imagine it. I really don't know how long I've been cultivating this way. No matter what, it was great news that he had broken through to the 6th stage now. After this incident, Yun Yang's cultivation base and capability had not simply doubled, but had risen wildly. No, it should be said that he had made several consecutive somersaults, and his capability had increased by more than 10 times. This knowledge made Yun Yang feel a little satisfied for a short time. At least for now, he could be considered as someone who was neither too big nor too small in the entire bound of universe. With his current cultivation base and capability, Yun Yang felt that his residence of 9 Supremes had the possibility to at least ascend to the upper-class celestial luck banner. I hope those fellows can also work harder. With such a breakthrough, Yun Yang had more confidence in his ability to protect himself during this trip to the demonic race. It was a promising prospect. Looking at the boundless treasures of heaven and earth in his deific consciousness, Yun Yang was delighted. This time, it was so worth it. Not only had he helped the holy land of divine punishment that he respected, but he had also gained so many good things. Thinking of the golden armored ants, when he let them seep their air of vitality into the spring, he did not give them a portion as promised. Feeling the heroic self-destruction of the 300 golden armored ants, Yun Yang gave them 2 portions. All of them were left at the bottom of the water, and he could feel that the spring water that gushed out was different from before. It was full of life force. With this gravel, the golden armored ants would be able to grow rapidly. Along the way, Yun Yang found some scattered beasts to practice his skills while he searched for treasures of heaven and earth. Yun Yang did not walk quickly, but he still managed to cover a few thousand miles in a day. Overall, his pace was not slow at all. In spite of this, Yun Yang quickly realized a problem, or rather, a puzzle. Logically speaking, the celestial demonic gateway in the holy land of Tian Fa would never allow any demons to enter the bound of universe with such a tight lockdown. In that case, where in the world did the demons that had entered the Xianhuang world come from? No matter how he thought about it, he was still unable to make sense of it. With this question in mind, Yun Yang finally saw the Crimson Soul Mountain with his own eyes after half a month, as he walked further and further into the desolate land. For tens of millions of years, the Xianhuang world's understanding or knowledge of the Blood Soul Mountain was sparse. However, the number of legends related to it was uncountable. Countless wandering poets had left behind a huge amount of words and ink because of this. Poems, paintings, stories, and rumors were even more restricted. Even the common people of the Xianhuang world knew about the Crimson Soul Mountain. The key to the battle between humans and the demon race was related to the survival of the human race. As the demon race grew stronger day by day, the human race also kept advancing. One invaded with all its might, wanting to expand its territory and space for survival, while the other tried to stop the human race at all costs to defend its sovereignty. And the battlefield of the battle was at the Crimson Soul Mountain. A man should not sink into business, fight the Crimson Soul Mountain with a sword and a horse. I'm willing to be a ghost in the desert. I don't want to be a rich man in my hometown. This life and this body for the Xianhuang world, fight until my temples turn gray, 9 million miles of the Crimson Soul land, all are good men of my hometown. A man should cultivate in the Xianhuang world, pointing his sword at the Crimson Soul Mountain, die without a smile, leave your name in the world. The Crimson Soul Mountain had always been the supreme battlefield of the Xianhuang world. It was also the dreamland of the entire Xianhuang world's martial artists. Why was the Xianhuang world's martial world so peaceful? Firstly, it was naturally because of the extremely harsh and impartial supervision of the heavenly Tao. Secondly, it was because of the Crimson Soul Mountain. Once the Crimson Soul Mountain was lost, the Xianhuang world would be plunged into misery and suffering. There would be no more days of peace. This was a trial that concerned the continuation of misfortune and blessings. It was a trial that could not be lost. The Crimson Soul Mountain was too much of a burden for the humans of the Xianhuang world to bear. Yet, they had to try their best to bear it. As a result, an unwritten rule had appeared. Even if it was the hatred of killing one's father or stealing one's wife, as long as a martial artist came to the Crimson Soul Mountain to fight against external enemies, they would have to let go of their grudges. For millions of years in the Xianhuang world, all the martial artists who died in the battle at the Crimson Soul Mountain would be favored by their families for 3 generations. This unwritten rule was proposed by a Saint Monarch in the past. If one's martial style is awe-inspiring, one's heroic spirit will never fade, one will be favored for 3 generations, and be respected by the whole world. The moment this suggestion was put forward, it was passed. A martial artist's life might not only depend on the great Tao, but also not for fame and fortune. No one would object to this suggestion. However, soon after, another Saint Monarch suggested, the martial world is vast and mighty, the heroic spirit should be continued, but only for 3 generations, it cannot be extended any further. Therefore, the Crimson Soul Mountain was a land of war, but it was also a land of glory. As he thought of this, he looked at the towering mountain hundreds of miles in front of him, stretching tens of thousands of miles into the clouds and dividing the continent into 2. His heart was filled with respect. This was the backbone of mankind. The real one. However, a question arose. How should he go over? In the past, the Crimson Soul Mountain had yet to be built. At the end of the ultimate war between humans and demons, the 9-9 demonic formation, which had sacrificed 99 saint emperors of the human race to set up and killed countless demons, was finally broken by the 8 saint emperors of the demon race. However, the great loss of the demon race's vitality was already a foregone conclusion. The human race had won this ultimate war and had even built the Crimson Soul Mountain, blocking the demon race to the other side of the mountain. However, while the Crimson Soul Mountain prevented the demon race from invading the Xianhuang world, it also prevented the human race from going to the demon race. Did he really have to break into the perilous old land of the 9-9 demonic formation, the only known passage connecting the 2 realms? There were 2 sides to the conversation. The residence of 9 Supremes. At the moment when Yin-Yang broke through to the level of Supreme Saint, the spiritual qi in the residence of 9 Supremes experienced another tsunami-like change. The spiritual qi from all directions arrived in a flash, filling the entire residence of 9 Supremes tightly. Due to the abrupt eruption of spiritual qi this time and the intensity, many disciples who had just started cultivating were overwhelmed. Their bodies could not withstand the impact of such a huge amount of spiritual qi. The spiritual qi that was so dense that it was almost tangible dyed the entire residence of 9 Supremes purple. The spiritual qi of such intensity lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Then, it gradually faded into nothingness. For a moment, the crowd did not know whether the change was a blessing or a curse. They could not help worrying about their gains and losses. However, when they felt it carefully, they realized that the spiritual qi density in the residence of 9 Supremes was at least 3 times higher than 3 days ago. At the highest point of the main peak of the residence of 9 Supremes, the intermediate class celestial luck banner that symbolized the residence of 9 Supremes' current status had been uprooted at the first moment of the onslaught of spiritual qi, fluttering in the wind. After 3 days of extreme spiritual qi's nourishment, the words residence of 9 Supremes on the celestial luck banner had turned into the purest purple gold color. As the celestial luck banner fluttered in the wind, it emitted rays of golden light that illuminated the entire residence of 9 Supremes. Dong Qitian, who was cultivating nearby, was shocked by the change. Looking at the celestial luck banner that was uprooted and unmoving in the air, his face was solemn. The celestial luck banner was now hovering in the air, it was not inserted into the mountain peak, and the space 100 feet below was filled with illusory clouds and mist. It was only when it was 100 feet above the ground that the flagpole transformed into a purple gold color, supporting the celestial luck banner above it. At least, as far as Dong Qitian knew, a sect with an intermediate class celestial luck banner would never have such a situation. A few moments later, several silhouettes flew over. Luo Dajiang and the others, as well as the elders of the Phoenix Cry sect, had obviously sensed the huge change in the celestial luck banner and rushed over to see what was going on. As they arrived, Dong Qitian disappeared quietly. With his cultivation base, no one would have noticed his presence. Looking at the residence of 9 Supreme Celestial Luck banner, elderly of the Phoenix Cry sect's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, his face filled with disbelief and disbelief. The others had the same expression as well, looking at the residents of Nine Supreme Celestial Luck Banner as if they had seen a ghost. Luo Dajiang and the others, on the other hand, were also shocked, but there was nothing unusual about them. However, this was a sign of their shallow knowledge, as they did not know what the change in front of them meant. This is... Gan Tianyan swallowed with difficulty. Looking at the Celestial Luck Banner, his voice was hoarse. The Celestial Luck Banner. Does this mean that the residence of Nine Supremes has a Supreme Saint expert? Elderly swallowed and murmured, and it's not just a beginner-level Supreme Saint. That's 100 feet above the ground. Luo Dajiang and the others were clueless about this, so they asked one after another. The Celestial Luck Banner standing in front of the mountain gate only means that the banner recognizes the sect's current qualification, but the Celestial Luck Banner standing in the air is the image of an upper-class sect, which is also the Celestial Luck that I mentioned just now. Generally speaking, this will only happen when a Supreme Saint expert appears in a sect, and it must be the founder or the sect leader who has reached this realm. Gan Tianyan stared at Luo Dajiang and asked, "Has anyone among you broken through to the Supreme Saint realm?" Luo Dajiang and the others were still dumbfounded, stunned on the spot. The people of the residence of Nine Supremes were also puzzled. A Supreme Saint? Who has broken through to the Supreme Saint realm? The strongest among us is only a beginner-level Saint Emperor, which is still a long way from the Supreme Saint realm. That's a whole major level. Dong Qitian? Dong Qitian is a stingy man, and his cultivation base is beyond everyone's understanding, but he can't even be considered as a member of the residence of Nine Supremes, let alone the founder. It can't be him. The people of Phoenix Cry sect left very soon. They felt that they had been beaten black and blue, and all that was left in them was a sense of loss. The residence of Nine Supremes was really a group of geniuses, from top to bottom, from big to small, they were all geniuses. However, who among this group of geniuses had broken through to the Supreme Saint realm? Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? In the entire residence of Nine Supremes, there seemed to be no one over the age of 50. Who had reached the level of Supreme Saint? It was inexplicable. As for all the middle-class sects under the Sacred Heart Palace, including the top 3 sects, none of them could stand tall in the air with their Celestial Luck Banner. While Supreme Venerables were the top combat power in the bound of universe, the top 3 sects with mid-class Celestial Luck Banners had at least 1 or 2 Supreme Venerables. However, these Supreme Venerables were rarely the founders of the sects or the current leaders. Naturally, they would not be treated like this. Therefore, those who wanted to make their Celestial Luck Banner appear in the state of Celestial Luck could only appear if they were able to rise to the position of an upper-class sect. For example, the General Commerce League, which had successfully advanced because it had 4 Supreme Experts, now had such a Celestial Luck Banner. However, when they were still a middle-class sect before their promotion, even if they were the top of the middle-class sect, their Celestial Luck Banner was still no different from other middle-class sections. However, the residence of Nine Supremes was only ranked last among the middle-class sects now. How could it have such a Celestial Luck Banner? The residence of Nine Supremes was only newly established, and there were quite a number of people who could be considered founders, such as Yun Yang, Luo Dajiang, and even Qian Duo. However, the people of Phoenix Cry sect felt that they knew the residence of Nine Supremes very well. Even Yun Yang, who was the strongest among them, had only recently advanced to the level of Supreme Saint. How could it be possible for him to rise to the level of Supreme Saint in such a short period of time? Absolutely preposterous, absolutely preposterous. In the temporary base of the Phoenix Cry sect, someone in the residence of Nine Supremes has broken through to the level of Supreme Saint, and it must be one of the 12 founders. Only Yun Yang, the Demiurge Flawed 10, and brother Qian Duo can be considered the founders of the residence of Nine Supremes. Other than Yun Yang, Kong Luoyue, and Lan Ruojuan who brought their disciples out for training, the other 9 people are all here. Who could it be? Sure Wuchen hasn't come out of seclusion yet. With his method of destroying his foundation and reforging his sword heart, even if he can become a supreme saint, it won't be done in a short period of time. Besides, we're all nearby. If he broke through, we wouldn't have failed to sense it. Similarly, the others haven't broken through to the level of supreme saint either. Then, it can only be the other 3 people who aren't in the residence of 9 supremes. It's either Lan Ruojuan or Kong Luoyue. If it's not the 2 of them, it must be sect leader Yun Yang. Then, who's more likely? Everyone looked at each other and saw the same answer in each other's eyes. Yun Yang, sect leader Yun. He must have broken through to the level of supreme saint due to some kind of fortuitous encounter. Only Yun Yang, who has broken through to the level of supreme saint, is the sect leader, the first founder, and the person who named the name of the residence of 9 supremes, would have such signs of success. But when Yun Yang went out, he was just a first-grade saint emperor. It's only been a few days since then. Has it been 2 months? How could he have broken through to the level of supreme saint in such a short time? That's a whole realm. Anyone would think it's impossible, but what about the celestial luck banner? It can't be faked. This matter directly shocked everyone from the Phoenix Christ sect out of their wits, and they were at a loss. Everyone's feelings were extremely complicated. All along, although the people of the Phoenix Christ sect lived in the residence of 9 supremes as guests, they always had a sense of superiority in their hearts. We're the sect competing for the top seat of the middle-class celestial luck banner, and we're also the sect that will ascend to the upper-class celestial luck banner. The residents of 9 supremes barely managed to climb to the last place of the middle-class celestial luck banner because of luck. We're just at the bottom. Therefore, even though the environment of the residence of 9 supremes was much better than that of the Phoenix Christ sect, everyone subconsciously had a condescending attitude when they watched and toured. Even if you have a deep foundation, an excellent environment, and rich resources, you'll still need at least hundreds or thousands of years to catch up to the Phoenix Christ sect. Now, however, with the addition of the celestial luck banner in the air, the pride of the Phoenix Christ sect was immediately shattered. Not to mention anything else, the founder was amazing, the sect leader was amazing, and he had brought the entire sect forward with his own strength. The spiritual chi in the residence of 9 supremes was already more than 5 times that of the Phoenix Christ sect. The disciples of the residence of 9 supremes were all geniuses, so how long would it take to catch up to the Phoenix Christ sect? The answer was depressing just thinking about it. At the same time, for the first time, Dong Qitian took the initiative to gather the Demiurge Flawed 10 and Qian Duo, holding a meeting. As you can see, the residence of 9 supremes has shown signs of celestial luck. This can only happen when Yin Yang ascends to the level of supreme saint, so the residence of 9 supremes has officially entered a stage of rapid development. However, if you want to become a high-rank sect, this kind of chaotic atmosphere is not enough. Dong Qitian did not beat around the bush either, going straight to the point and going straight to the point. All the disciples are first-generation disciples. There's no difference, and there's a huge hidden danger. The sect's facilities are far inferior to those of a true famous sect. The rewards and punishments, the elixir pavilion, the spiritual herb garden, and the ranking of disciples need to be reorganized. There's also the martial repository, the location of the ancestral temple, weapons, and so on. You have to think of other ways to perfect them. Dong Qitian had only given a simple and general reminder and did not bother about anything else. To be honest, Dong Qitian felt that his reminder was unnecessary. These things were the basic structure of a sect. It could be small or just a prototype, but a sect that wanted to develop could not do without them. Dong Qitian left after he finished speaking. However, Luo Dajiang and the others, along with Qian Duo, had a meeting all night long. I haven't thought about how to develop the Blood Soul Mountain, so I'm going to overdo it. Apt, Mobile Reading Access, M. Chapter 1230. When it came to roaming the martial world and fighting strong enemies, Qian Duo was naturally not as good as Luo Dajiang and the others, but when it came to managing a sect and building all the facilities it needed, it was Qianduoduo's specialty. Looking at the residence of 9 Supremes and the celestial luck banner showing the legendary celestial luck, Qianduoduo was so excited as if he had taken a few hundred caddies of medicine. Everyone has their own specialties. I'm in charge of all this. You only need to assist me or provide manpower. Remember to listen to my arrangements. The next morning, Qianduoduo, who had not slept all night, went down the mountain in high spirits. When he came back, he had already brought back a large group of craftsmen, who were still in high spirits and more excited than if they had been injected with chicken blood. Mark out this piece of land for me. Not too much, about 3 acres will do. And this side, about 3 acres as well, next to each other. Yes. This side needs 50 acres. Build a small building here, build a pavilion here, dig a pond here, yes, build a building here as well, 10 acres of land will do. This is the focus. Expand our mountain range and expand it to 3,000 acres. While Qianduoduo was extremely busy, he always maintained a state of mind that was never tired of it. He was truly like a Superman. The disciples of the 9 peaks must be dressed neatly. From now on, personal seniority needs to be strictly divided. The founders will wear purple robes, like the boss. The first generation of disciples will wear yellow, the second generation will wear black, the third generation will wear blue, the fourth generation will wear red, the fifth generation will wear green, and so on. Majordomo Qian, what if there are a dozen generations of disciples in the future? You've used up all the 7 colors now. What will happen after that? The 7 colors I've set are the main colors. Below that, you only need to match the cuffs and necklines of different colors with different clothes of different colors. These are easy to do. It's clear at a glance, and there won't be any mistakes. Qianduoduo had a well-thought-out plan. His words were eloquent and convincing, yet his words had substance and he spoke with certainty. In fact, he had wanted to do this for a long time, but Yunyang found it troublesome and was afraid that his disciples would have thoughts of leaving and delay their personal progress. But now, all of this was directly placed on the table. For Qianduoduo, who had long planned this, it was just putting the plan in his mind into action. There was really no need to be long-winded. For example, he found over 1,000 tailors at one time, but they were all able to do their own thing. They were messy but not messy, and orderly. How big exactly? Make your clothes according to the measurements. After you're done, make 6 sets of clothes for each person from inside to outside. 2 sets for summer and autumn, 2 sets for winter and spring, and 2 sets for training clothes that are specially used for training and tempering the body. Pay attention to the different styles, don't mix them up. Just 6 sets? Isn't that a little too little? These can only last for a year at most. Yes, I want them to wear it for a year. These little guys are growing up now. I wonder how much they will change after a year. This number is just right. Other than the older ones whose bodies are almost fixed, do this for everyone else. All right. Same goes for the shoes. Understood. Little Fatty jumped up and down, shouting until his throat was hoarse every day. However, he was never tired of it and continued shouting for days on end. To Qianduoduo, building a sect with his own hands and watching it grow from scratch, especially since he was the one who had been the one to plan and manage the sect's basic construction from the beginning to the end, even drawing the blueprint and laying the foundation for everything. To him, this was already the greatest happiness in this lifetime. Although he was only the majordomo in the residence of 9 Supremes, not the founder, not the leader, and not the main fighting force, even Yunyang, who had personally founded the sect, did not feel as strong a sense of happiness and satisfaction as Little Fatty when the residence of 9 Supremes had developed to its current state. In fact, he was far from it, 10 or even 100 times behind. This was because this was Little Fatty's greatest obsession in this life. It was fresh and unwavering. All of his learning in the first half of his life, all of his pursuits in the second half, and all of his hard work were entangled in this. Other than this, there was nothing else. To Qianduoduo, the top mystical cultivation method, being unrivaled in the world, being immortal, all of these did not matter. What he wanted was to create the glory of a sect with his own hands. It would be best if it was the top sect in the world. Then, he would have no desires for 3 lifetimes. This was Qianduoduo's Tao, a branch of the Commerce League's Tao and Shi Wuchen's Tao of the Sword. Each had their own path, but their destination was the same. Qianduoduo was busy. Luo Dajiang and the others were busy as well, cultivating. Yun Yang's huge breakthrough had given them unprecedented stimulation and impact. When Qianduoduo left in the morning, the 9 of them did not disperse but continued with a small meeting. Boss has entered the realm of Supreme Saint. Yi Tuo is still in closed-door cultivation, and his sword energy is getting stronger and stronger. Although he hasn't left the mountain yet, the sword energy that overflows from him can already affect the entire residence of 9 Supremes. It's foreseeable that he'll have a great improvement after coming out this time. The few of us, on the other hand, are too weak. We're lagging far behind. We have to catch up. Now that the spiritual qi in the residence of 9 Supremes is so rich, it's a great time to cultivate. I think that not only should we continue our previous special training, but we should also work harder and increase the difficulty. Besides cultivating, we should also continue sparring with each other. Luo Dajiang said, if we only maintain the current cultivation progress, I'm afraid that our disciples will catch up with us before we can improve our cultivation base. When the time comes that a master is not as good as a disciple, it will be a great disgrace. Luo Dajiang's words made the faces of the demiurge flawed 10 turn very ugly. We've noticed this as well. Tai Qingsang's face was solemn. We've been living too comfortably recently. In the following period of time, Luo Dajiang and the others really cultivated with all their might. The intensity of their cultivation was so extreme that it was as if they wanted to train themselves to death. Every time they cultivated, they squeezed themselves with all their might. First, they unleashed a series of ultimate moves, which would basically deplete their mystical qi, inner energy, and physical strength within a quarter of an hour. Then, they had to hold on with perseverance. As they held on, they recovered, and in the shortest time possible, they emptied themselves again and continued to hold on. It was not that there was no rest time at all, but it was used to answer the doubts of their disciples. Seeing that their masters were cultivating in such an extreme way, the true disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes followed suit, each of them sharpening themselves in a manner that was far beyond what they had been doing before. Naturally, the junior brothers and sisters who were below them felt the threat. Senior brothers and sisters' cultivation base has begun to leap again, leaving us further and further behind. What should we do? Train hard. Train hard. Train hard. From top to bottom, the residents of 9 Supremes had launched the most extreme cultivation mode. It doesn't matter if you don't adopt this cultivation method, because what awaits you is only elimination. If you don't want to be eliminated, you can only work hard and go to extremes. Even when they were eating, some of them were reciting the formula and going to their senior brothers and sisters with their bowls to ask questions they did not understand. Even when they were squatting, some disciples were constantly thinking about the direction of their cultivation and how to solve the difficulties they encountered. All of this caused Yun Yang to be shocked when he came back. Of course, this was a story for a long time to come. On the other side, Yun Yang transformed into wind and cloud again, intending to enter the demon realm directly from the sky. Transforming into wind and cloud, he was no different from being invisible. However, what baffled Yun Yang was, when he transformed into wind and cloud and went to the highest point and was about to fly over the bloody Soul Mountain, he suddenly felt an endless pressure coming from the sky. It was a unique pressure similar to that of the sky. It seemed to be warning that no one was allowed to pass through the sky. Since ancient times, no one had been able to fly over the peak of the bloody Soul Mountain. But how could Yun Yang give up? His wind and cloud had always been successful. Even if it was the power of heaven, it still belonged to nature. He did not believe that it could do anything to his wind and cloud transformation. Yun Yang chose to continue floating up against the huge pressure. The manifestation of wind and cloud was unique indeed as it continued to rise against the might of heaven. However, with every few feet that he rose, the pressure would increase. This was due to the significant breakthrough in Yun-Yang's cultivation base and the endless divine art reaching the 6th tier. Not only did his cultivation base and combat power increase exponentially, but his physical body's ability to withstand the pressure was also much stronger than before. If it had been his previous weak physique, the current might of heaven would not have been able to withstand it. There are still about 5,000 feet from here to the top of the mountain. Yun-Yang saw that he had already passed the entrance of the Bloody Soul Mountain for a long, long time. Looking at the end of the sky, he felt very confident and the chance of victory was in his hands. Bearing the pressure, he flew up another 2,000 feet. At this height, he was almost 200,000 feet from the ground. Even if he ignored the mighty force of the heavens, just the hurricanes in the sky were enough to produce a cutting force that could tear apart a high-level cultivator. Yun-Yang judged that even a random gust of wind from this height could uproot a small patch of forest, leaving not a single blade of grass behind when it reached the ground. Even so, Yun-Yang could still bear the pressure and even had some energy to spare. However, at this time, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in the sky. The bolt of lightning that had appeared out of nowhere was only as thick as a fingernail. It was twisted and seemed to be powerless. To Yun-Yang, who had been through the baptism of a heavenly tribulation, it was not even worth a glance. He could not even spare a glance at it, not even intending to dodge it. In spite of this, Yun-Yang howled in pain the moment he came into contact with the sudden flash of lightning. He was revealed in the sky at once, drifting back and forth amidst the hurricane as he plummeted. With his current cultivation base, he could not even control his body as he plummeted to the ground in a free fall under the shock of the lightning's power. It was not that Yun-Yang did not want to move, but he could not. His entire body was numb and he could not even move a finger. The only sense that worked was probably his sense of smell. When the lightning struck his entire body was filled with an indescribable barbecued meat aroma. It was an exotic aroma that assaulted his nostrils. Yun-Yang himself wanted to take a few bites when he smelled it, let alone others. However, this seemed to be his own flesh. As Yun-Yang's thoughts raced, he quickly deduced that when the small bolt of lightning struck him, more than 80% of his body had been burnt and roasted. Otherwise, he would not have ended up like this. Other than his head that was not roasted, the rest of his body, from the neck down, any part of his body could be paired with a fine wine. Yun-Yang did not dare to think about the wonderful spot between his legs. Perhaps, the chicken and eggs would be destroyed at this moment. If Yun-Yang had not ascended to the realm of the Supreme Saint and had the ability to reconstruct his body and reconstruct his golden body, he would have been depressed to the point of committing suicide. Right now, I'm probably only left with my internal organs that haven't been completely burned. My head is still fine. On the Bloody Soul Mountain, at a height of about 90,000 feet, there was an obvious curved mountain pass. On both sides were cliffs that towered into the clouds. Only this place was slightly lower. At this height, there was a man dressed in white standing with his hands behind his back. His face was filled with a mocking smile as he looked at the fragrant body falling from the sky. He actually wants to fly over the forbidden land of heaven. No matter who he is, this old man is very impressed. It has been a long time since I have eaten fresh meat. Other than the strange giant condor that fell from the top when it was roasted, this old man has forgotten what meat tastes like these years. My luck is really good these days. It has been less than a year, what good luck. At this time, another man dressed in white appeared out of thin air. He chuckled and said, "You may be able to eat the giant condor again this time. It is most appropriate to compliment the shape of the condor. Congratulations." The eyes of the man dressed in white were half-lidded as he said coldly, "It seems that you have not remembered the lesson from last time. If you really make this old man angry, this old man will roast you and eat you. Do you think this old man would not dare to or not?" The man dressed in white guffawed and said, "Brother, I have lost count of how many times I have said that I would roast me after so many years. It is a pity that this old man has never seen you do it. Your mouth is just a so-so. Do you want to try? The man dressed in white's gaze changed abruptly, turning cold. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came from the sky. Yin Yang's body had fallen 1,000 feet away. This child's luck is not bad. He has actually fallen directly to the bloody soul mouth. The man dressed in white had not finished his sentence when he lifted his hand lightly. A gentle breeze rose abruptly and gently held leader Yun, who was falling from a high altitude, in midair. It was a gentle breeze, without the slightest ripple, but it held Yun Yang's falling body steady, not moving an inch. Clap, 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 a few pieces of fragrant meat fell from Yun Yang's body and fell to the ground. Then, an even more intense aroma spread in all directions. Remember the mobile version of the website, Chapter 343 Extreme Joy Begets Sorrow. Page 1/1, bookmark for easier reading. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.